Chapter 8:17. The Exodus has come to the apothecary school? School head Lu was taken aback for a brief moment before narrowing his eyes. He is no longer a student of the academy. Why didn't anyone stop him? Considering that Zhongxian was no longer a student of the academy, how could he be allowed to enter the premises of the academy as he pleased? He possesses the personal tokens of school head Mo, school head Zhao, and school head Wei. On top of that, he's also the teacher of 3 guest elders, so his seniority is higher than even teachers. We weren't able to stop him. The young man's face turned crimson. It was not as if the Master Teacher Academy was some forbidden land exclusive to only students and teachers. Furthermore, the other party had the personal tokens of 3 school heads, so how could they stop him? What is he doing at the apothecary school? Lu Feng asked with an awful complexion. What the other party said was true. Putting aside the students, even he didn't have the official authority to hinder Zhongxian from going to the apothecary school. I'm not too sure either. As soon as he arrived in the apothecary school, he headed straight for the library, the young man said. The library? Lu Feng frowned. But he doesn't have a student token on him. What is he doing there? To enter the library, there were 2 things that one needed: a student token and academic credits. After clearing the wall of dilemma, Zhongxian had no lack of academic credits. However, without a student token, he couldn't be considered a student of the academy, so naturally, he wasn't allowed to use their facilities. He stopped right before the entrance of the library and went into a daze. At this point, a bizarre expression surfaced on the young man's face. Went into a daze? Lu Feng and the other vice school heads were dumbstruck by what they heard. He specially made the trip into the apothecary school just to stand in a daze before their library? That's right. He stood there completely motionless, speaking not a single word, his eyes fixated on the library, the young man replied. School head Lu and the 4 vice school heads blinked blankly. They were wondering what the fellow could be up to, coming to the apothecary school, but to think that he would go into a daze. What the heck? Is he still there? Lu Feng asked. He was still there when I left. It has been around an hour since then, the young man replied. Upon hearing that Zhongxian was there, Lu Feng was stunned for a moment. No matter how he thought about it, it felt that there was something wrong with the matter, so he stood up. That fellow caused the collapse of the passageway of records in the blacksmith school and the tower of physicians in the physician school. I think that is up to no good here too. Follow me to take a look. Even though he had only met Zhongxian once, he still remembered how tenacious Zhongxian had been when he cornered him on the stage. Furthermore, Zhongxian had also threatened to challenge the apothecary school back then as well. For some reason, he felt extremely unnerved, and his heart simply wouldn't calm down. The only way he could ease his mind was to take a look personally. Yes. Recalling the various deeds that Zhongsha had done in the past, the mouths of the 4 vice school heads also twitched as well, and they hurriedly got to their feet. In truth, when they heard about how Zhongxian wreaked havoc in other schools previously, they had even gloated over it. But now that it was happening to their own school, they couldn't help but feel as if peril was right behind them, and it left them fidgety. They immediately rushed off to the library at top speed, and it took them less than 10 minutes to arrive at their destination. The library looked no different from before, towering and majestic. It didn't seem as if it was damaged in the least, and Zhongxian was nowhere to be seen either. Perplexed, Lu Feng turned to the student and asked, "Where is he?" "I have no idea. He was definitely here just now," the young man said in confusion as he raised his finger and pointed to a specific spot. That fellow had been standing in a daze in front of the library for some time before he felt that something was amiss and went to look for the school head. Why did he suddenly disappear from there? But one thing noteworthy about the surroundings was that, perhaps drawn here by Zhongxian's reputation, quite a crowd had gathered. Wait a moment, I will find someone to ask. After scanning the surroundings and seeing that Zhongxian was nowhere in sight, the young man walked toward the small shack beside the library entrance. That was where the few grade 3 students in charge of looking after the library stayed. But before the young man even reached the shack, the shack doors opened, and 2 young men walked out. Recognizing one of the duo, the young man called out, "Hu Shu." "Senior Lu Hui." Hu Shu clasped his fist and returned the greeting. Seeing that the duo was carrying their luggage with them, Lu Hui asked bewilderedly, "Where are you two going?" Students working as the library guards were expected to stay in the shack for the entire semester in order to take care of it around the clock. It was just a few days since the start of the semester, but why were they both carrying their luggage out of the shack? Reporting to senior, "We have just listened to Zhongsha's lecture, and his words have enlightened us. We feel that we aren't suited to studying pill forging, so we have decided to leave the apothecary school and study another occupation instead," Hu Shu reported. Lecture. Lu Hui widened his eyes upon hearing those words. Lu Feng and the others couldn't help but turn their gazes over as well. That fellow was lecturing here? With a bitter smile, Hu Shu said with a depressed look, "Yes." After standing in a daze for a moment, Zhongsha began to lecture us. I was one of the fortunate few who happened to hear it, and it was only then that I realized that even though apothecary is ranked at the top of the upper 9 paths, an extremely prestigious occupation, I am simply not suited for it. All those years I have spent studying the art of pill forging, they were all in vain. Zhongsha's lecture was comprehensive and profound, and all who had listened to it had benefited greatly from it. Although Hu Shu had studied pill forging for some time, the lecture had made him realize that he was simply not suited to be an apothecary. Even if he were to attempt to force his way through, the mismatch in his aptitude would make it an uphill battle, and eventually, he would only reach a bottleneck. Rather than suffer on but achieve nothing in the end, it would be much better for him to let go. In any case, there were 9 supporting occupations in the Master Teacher Academy. Even if he didn't study pill forging, there were still others he could explore. Surely, there would be one that would be aligned with his aptitude. Hearing Hu Shu's words, Lu Hui couldn't help but ask the other grade 3 student standing beside him, "You also don't think that you are suited for pill forging?" "That's right, I also don't think that I am suited either. Farewell, senior." Leaving those words behind, they turned around and left. With their departure, there would be no one to guard the library anymore. The school head and the 4 vice school heads glanced at one another with a slightly troubled look, seemingly at a loss about what to do. However, the worst had yet to come. The next moment, a few more students walked over, and just like Hu Shu and the student beside him just now, they were carrying baggage with them as well. Taking a closer look at their faces, one of the vice school heads exclaimed in surprise, "Vice school head Wei, aren't those your students?" Occasionally, the school heads and vice school heads of the Master Teacher Academy would take in some students under their tutelage as well, just like how Wei Ranshua took in Hu Yao Yao. Recognizing them, Vice School Head Wei replied, "Yes, they are indeed my students, Xu Yongning and the others, but they are carrying their luggage. Could it be that they don't think that they are suited for pill forging, too?" The mouth of the other Vice School Head twitched. "How is that possible?" Vice School Head Wei exclaimed. "Xu Yongning might not be the most talented apothecary among the students under me, but he definitely ranks among the top few. His aptitude for pill forging is extremely high, and it's only a matter of time before he becomes a 6-star apothecary. How can he possibly be unsuited for pill forging?" Xu Yongning was one of his most outstanding students. If even he was unsuited for pill forging, who else would be? Then, the other vice school head asked doubtfully. For him to be carrying his luggage, it seemed he had the same intention as Hu Shu as well. If he wasn't intending to leave the apothecary school, what else could he be up to then? "I'll go ask him." With a livid expression, Vice School Head Wei harumphed and stepped forward. However, at that moment, Xu Yongning seemed to have noticed him and rushed forward to greet him. "Teacher." Xu Yongning clasped his fist. "What happened?" Vice School Head Wei asked with narrowed eyes. Reporting to teacher, "I am here to bid you farewell." Xu Yongning suddenly got to his knees and lowered his head in shame. "Bid me farewell? Could it be that you found that you are unsuited to be an apothecary, too?" Hearing those words, Vice School Head Wei felt so furious that he could burst into flames on the spot. "Of course not. It's just that I don't think that I am suited for teachers' lessons, and it will be difficult for me to make substantial improvement under your tutelage. Thus, I don't wish for you to waste your precious time on me, so I've decided to bid you farewell." Xu Yongning spoke hesitantly. Flicking his wrist, He took out the other party's tutelage token and handed it back. Just as teachers could choose their students, students could choose their teachers. This was a two-way relationship. My lessons are not suited for you. Vice School Head Wei was stunned. He was the vice head of the apothecary school, a 6-star pinnacle apothecary, and his knowledge of pill forging was only beneath school head Lu Feng by a notch. Yet, this fellow actually wanted to withdraw from his tutelage. Yes. After hearing Zhongshi's lecture, I finally understand what pill forging truly means. Even though teachers' lessons are impressive as well, I find Zhongshi's teachings are far more impactful and profound. Thus, I intend to join the Shenzhen faction to pursue Zhongshi. I am truly sorry, and I beg for teachers' understanding. After placing the tutelage token back into the shocked vice school head Wei's hands, Xu Yongning stood up, turned around, and left. Vice school head Wei was completely stunned. His face was twitching non-stop, and he felt as if he was going to lose his sanity soon. To think that someone would actually withdraw from the lesson of a 6-star pinnacle apothecary like him. Not to mention, the reason was that his lessons were inferior a freshman's. The hell? This was a severe slap right to his face. Teacher, we are also here to withdraw from your tutelage. Please forgive us. Zhongshi's lecture was a true eye-opener. It was only a short lecture, but it made me realize that only through pursuing him will I be able to make greater progress as an apothecary. Before Vice School Head Wei could recover from the primary shock, the other students who were with Xu Yongning hurriedly rushed forward and passed their tutelage tokens back as well. Previously, every single one of them had worked extremely hard to get into his lessons, and they had celebrated for 3 days and 3 nights when they succeeded. They had viewed it as a great honor, and they'd gone around the apothecary school bragging about it before others. Yet, at this very moment, they were withdrawing from his tutelage, and judging from their expressions, it seemed like they were even fearful that he would deny them of their freedom. Vice School Head Wei couldn't help but feel extremely stifled within. Something is wrong here. Watching how the students left with a delighted look on their faces after withdrawing from their tutelage, School Head Lu's mouth twitched. He walked up to Vice School Head Wei and asked, for so many students to withdraw from the lesson at once, could it be that there is something wrong with your lesson and Zhongxian managed to grab onto that and exploit it? There was only one reason for such an exodus of students: something was wrong with the teacher's lessons. If that was the case, not only would the teacher's reputation be soiled, the prestige of the entire school would plummet as well. The main reason the apothecary school was able to become the #1 school of the Master Teacher Academy was due to the overwhelming number of students under them, numbering over 60,000. But if a huge number of students were to withdraw from their lessons at once, their position as the #1 school would be threatened. Seeing that School Head Lu was doubting his teaching capability, a bitter smile appeared on Vice School Head Lu's expression. I don't think that there's any problem with my lessons. He always designed his lessons in a way such that it abided by the conventions of the Apothecary Guild. While they weren't outstanding, there was no particularly glaring mistake with them either. Just what kind of problem could have happened for so many students to withdraw from his tutelage after listening to a lecture from Zhongxian? Then what other reason could there be? Lu Feng frowned. Just as he was about to continue on, another group of students suddenly appeared and rushed up to them. School head, they seem to be your students, Vice School Head Wei remarked. School Head Lu nodded in response. Just like Lu Hui, these students were under his tutelage, and he had already taught them for several years. Don't worry, I have confidence in my lessons. My students can't possibly withdraw from my tutelage like yours. Most probably, they are just here to report to me with news on Zhongxian, School Head Lu said assuredly. But just as he was about to ask the group what they were there for, they abruptly kneeled onto the floor simultaneously. Teacher, we are thankful for your guidance over the years. However, we would like to withdraw from your tutelage. Chapter 8:18. Even they have fled in that instant, Lu Feng's body swayed weakly from side to side. It was just a moment ago that he had declared his confidence in his lessons, but then these fellows said that they would like to withdraw from his tutelage. Must you really slap my face like that? Suppressing his overwhelming rage, School Head Lu asked hoarsely, why? One of the students hesitated for a moment before speaking. Reporting to teacher, After listening to Zhongsha's lecture, we feel like we have squandered the past few years of our lives learning pill forging. Thus, we hope that you can let us go. Even though we are withdrawing from your tutelage, you will forever be our teacher in our hearts. We will never show the slightest disrespect to you. If there's no comparison, there's no damage. It was only after hearing Zhongsha's lecture that they finally understood what pill forging truly was and how many detours they had taken under school head Lu's tutelage. If they had learned from Zhongsha from the very start, they would have definitely already become a 6-star apothecary or even higher by now. They knew full well that withdrawing from their teacher's tutelage would sully his reputation, but for their own futures, they had no other choice. Just like how teachers could choose their students, students could choose their own teachers as well. Even if they had already acknowledged Lu Feng as their teacher, they still had the freedom to withdraw from his tutelage. After all, they were just ordinary students, not direct disciples. Squandered the past few years of your lives. School head Lu staggered, and he felt a crushing pressure on his chest. For a moment, he found himself unable to catch his breath. To think that he, the head of the apothecary school, as well as the most formidable master apothecary in Hongyuan Empire, would have his lessons described to be squandering one's life away. Ah, my heart and my lungs. Just what did that fellow say for all of you to be so mesmerized and impressed by him? With a livid expression, Lu Feng dripped a drop of blood on their tutelage tokens as he said, "Fine, I will allow you to withdraw from my tutelage as long as you tell me where Zhongshen is." His students had already spoken such words. It would only further his humiliation if he were to attempt to retain his students after all of that. The student pondered for a moment before replying. After Zhongsha finished his lecture, he headed to the apothecary pavilion. It seems he intends to take the 6-star apothecary examination. Apothecary pavilion? Ignoring those fellows who had just withdrawn from his tutelage, school head Lu turned around and beckoned the others. Let's go and take a look. Similar to the Tower of Physicians, the apothecary pavilion was a place where apothecaries could interact with one another and take their examinations. There were also all kinds of tests that one could take there. Leaving Lu Hui behind to guard the library temporarily, Lu Feng and the other vice school heads hurriedly proceeded forward. Just like the Tower of Physicians, the apothecary pavilion was also an extremely tall building, as well as the landmark of the apothecary school. Seeing that the apothecary pavilion was still standing tall and grand, the group heaved a sigh of relief. Judging from Zhongshen's past history of bringing forth destruction, even Lu Feng couldn't help but feel a little fearful. Entering the apothecary pavilion, there was a huge crowd selling and purchasing pills and looking for pill forging services, as per usual. There didn't seem to be anything out of ordinary. Did he not come here? The school head and vice school heads glanced at one another in confusion. They had long heard of what had happened to the Tower of Physicians. Wherever Zhongshen appeared, destruction and catastrophe followed. If he was truly here, how could everything still be intact? This didn't make sense. Let me ask around. After a moment of hesitation, vice school head Wei stepped forward and stopped a student. Student, was there anything weird that happened here? Vice school head Wei. Recognizing the other party, the student leaped in shock. She pondered for a moment before hurriedly replying, "No, nothing happened at all." Nothing happened at all? Vice school head Wei gazed at the student's face intently for a moment before waving his hands. "I see. You may go." "Yes." The student hurriedly left. After which, vice school head Wei proceeded to ask a few more students, but they gave the same response as well. Having confirmed that nothing had happened, he returned back to a group with a relieved smile on his face. "It seems like our worry is unfounded. No matter how formidable he is, that Zhongshen is still only a 20-year-old lad. Since he already possesses a profound understanding in the way of medicine and smithing, it would be asking too much for him to be skilled in pill forging as well. Perhaps it might be something else that led to the students before withdrawing from the school. Let's hope that's the case." School head Lu nodded with an uneasy smile. Even though nothing had happened, he still had an ominous premonition. If it was so easy to deal with that fellow, he wouldn't have been so troubled over this matter. "Let's head to the 6-star apothecary examination apothecary forge to take a look," school head Lu said. The group headed to the upper levels of the apothecary pavilion, where the apothecary forges for the apothecary examinations were located. However, the examination area was extremely peaceful. It didn't seem like anything had happened here at all. Thus, they called the teacher in charge of managing the apothecary forges over. "Did anyone come over to take the apothecary examination earlier?" Lu Feng asked. "No one at all. I have been here since morning, and I haven't seen anyone here." The teacher shook his head doubtfully, not sure why school head Lu would ask such a question. "No one at all?" Lu Feng was still slightly doubtful. His students had clearly told him that Zhong Xian had headed here to take the 6-star examination, but why wasn't he in the apothecary forges then? "No one at all. If school head still doesn't believe me, I have the records here." Noticing the slightly peculiar state the school head was in, the teacher hurriedly handed over a book recording the students taking the apothecary examination. School head Lu took the book and confirmed that no one had been there since the morning. He traded glances with the other vice school heads, and they heaved a sigh of relief together. It seemed like vice school head Wei was right. As talented as that fellow was, he couldn't possibly be that skilled in pill forging as well. After all, each human had their own strengths and weaknesses. If a human were to be that talented in all aspects, he wouldn't be a human but God. "It seems I really worried over nothing this time around. All right, there's nothing else. You can return to your station now. However, if a 20-year-old young man comes here, make sure to report the matter to me immediately," school head Lu instructed. "Yes," the teacher replied. At that moment, another thought suddenly struck him, and he asked, "School head, I suddenly remembered something. Other than taking the examination here, it's also possible to take the 6-star apothecary examination at the Ancestral Hall as well." "Ancestral Hall? Impossible. The Ancestral Hall is prepared solely for students who intend to challenge the pill debate, but it's not like you are unaware of how difficult it is. Even I can't say with absolute confidence that I would be able to pass a 6-star pill debate. Why would anyone go through that additional effort for it when there is an easier way?" Lu Feng shook his head. There were 2 formats for apothecary examinations. One of them was to forge a pill with a grade corresponding to the rank which the apothecary was intending to advance to. For example, to clear a 6-star apothecary examination, one had to successfully forge a grade 6 pill. As for the other format, it was the pill debate. The pill debate was conducted in the Ancestral Hall. The Ancestral Hall had a communication wall linked to the Apothecary Guild headquarters, and the headquarters would dispatch 6-star pinnacle apothecaries to conduct the examination. These apothecaries would raise questions in order to verify the examinee's comprehension of pill forging, and the examinee had to answer every single question without making the slightest mistake. However, the 6-star pinnacle apothecaries in the headquarters possessed a far deeper understanding of pills than those in the branches due to their association with higher-ranked apothecaries. To answer their questions without making the slightest mistake, nigh impossible. Putting aside the fact that Zhong Xian was only a 20-year-old lad, even a veteran with 800 years of experience like him couldn't hope to succeed in a pill debate. As a result, almost all apothecaries would opt for the easier pill forging examination rather than the nearly impossible pill debate. That's true. Understanding the logic behind it, the teacher nodded in agreement. But regardless of the case, I think that we should still head to the Ancestral Hall to take a look. Vice School Head Wei interjected. Since they were already there, they might as well check on the Ancestral Hall as well to bring them peace of mind. Lu Feng emphasized for the teacher to keep a tight watch over the apothecary forges once again before heading to the Ancestral Hall with the group. The Ancestral Hall was located in the vicinity of the apothecary forges, so it didn't take too long for them to arrive there. Just like the apothecary forges, the Ancestral Hall was extremely quiet as well. As there were nearly no students who would attempt the pill debate, the apothecary school also didn't bother dispatching anyone to look after the premises. The group entered the grounds, but the area looked exactly how they remembered it to be. It didn't seem like anything had happened there. It doesn't seem like anyone has been here. Vice School Head Wei heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the Ancestral Hall was still standing, it should mean that that fellow hadn't been there, and there was no problem whatsoever, so they need not worry about the matter. However, the next moment, Vice School Head Jew suddenly widened his eyes and exclaimed, "No, something is wrong." "What is wrong?" "The communication walls and the other items are completely undamaged." Vice School Head Wei asked doubtfully. There were 10 massive communication walls erected in the ancestral hall, and all of them were undamaged. It didn't seem like Zhongxian had come here at all. The communication walls might be fine, but look at the communication jade screen in front. Vice School Head Ju pointed. Everyone hurriedly turned their gazes over as well. As well as the communication walls, there was also a communication jade screen in the ancestral hall. The former was to relay messages to 6-star apothecaries in the headquarters, while the latter could establish communication with 7-star apothecaries in the headquarters. At the moment, there was still a slight glow on the communication jade token, and it was a little warm to the touch as well. It seemed like someone had just used it. Someone used the communication jade screen? Could it be that Zhongxian didn't establish communication with the 6-star apothecaries but the 7-star apothecaries instead? Impossible. Is he intending to take the 7-star apothecary pill debate examination? It's questionable whether he can pass the 6-star apothecary pill debate examination or not. To take the 7-star apothecary pill debate examination. Lu Feng, Vice School Head Wei, and the others shook their heads in disagreement. How could it be possible for a 20-year-old freshman of the Master Teacher Academy to take the 7-star apothecary examination? After a moment of silence, a vice school head suddenly spoke up. He's probably here to request a grade 7 pill formula. There could only be 2 possibilities where one would need to activate the communication jade screen. 1. To take the 7-star apothecary examination. 2. To request a grade 7 pill formula from the headquarters. But regardless of what it is, one has to use 10 different grade 6 pills as a deposit in order to activate the communication jade token. Where did the fellow find so many grade 6 pills? One of the vice school heads asked. 7-star apothecaries were extremely busy. They weren't figures whom one could meet just because they wanted to. As such, one had to compensate the 7-star apothecaries duly for their time, and that was through grade 6 pills. Only if one could take out 10 different grade 6 pills could one activate the communication jade screen. It was due to this rule that there had rarely been anyone who had established communication with a 7-star apothecary ever since the ancestral hall was built. It wasn't that no one dared to reach out to them, but the price was simply far too heavy. No matter how talented Zhongxian might be, he was only a 20-year-old young man. It was already extremely difficult for him to even buy a residence. How could he possibly be able to take out 10 different grade 6 pills at once? But it is clear that the communication jade screen was activated just a moment ago. This shows that someone did communicate with a 7-star apothecary, Vice School Head Ju said. Even though it was hard to believe, it was a fact that the communication jade screen had been activated just a moment ago. There was no doubt about this. Could it be? At that moment, Lu Feng suddenly thought of something and his eyes narrowed. Just as he was about to speak, a figure abruptly rushed into the room. School Head Lu. School Head Lu. Bad news. The person who arrived was a familiar middle-aged man in his 40s. It was the teacher who was in charge of the pill chamber. What's wrong? Lu Feng's eyebrows shot up upon seeing the other party's anxious state. The grade 6 pills forged by School Head Lu, the vice school heads, and the teachers of the apothecary school that are stored in the pill chamber have. The middle-aged man looked as if he had seen a ghost, and his lips couldn't stop quivering. What's wrong with the pills? Vice School Head Wei asked anxiously as the other party stuttered at the crucial point. With a tearful face, the middle-aged man exclaimed, "The pills have escaped." Chapter 8:19, Lu Feng's frenzy. The pills have escaped? What do you mean by they have escaped? Lu Feng and the 4 vice school heads were stunned. Other than a few pills that they would use themselves, most of the 6-star apothecaries in the apothecary school would store the pills they had forged in the pill chamber, where they would be labeled with a price and sold when the opportunity presented itself. The middle-aged man happened to be in charge of this matter. It could be said that most of the wealth of the 6-star apothecaries in the apothecary school was within the pill chamber, and yet, you are telling me that those pills have escaped? Are you kidding me? It's true. They have escaped on their own. The middle-aged man said in a panic, but he had no idea how he could explain the situation. Just like the other teachers in the apothecary school, he was a 6-star master teacher as well. Yet, for a person of his capability to be rendered incapable of explaining himself, the situation he had encountered must have been truly shocking. What in the world happened? With a livid face, Lu Feng demanded furiously, "Explain yourself clearly." "It's like this. I was in one of the pill chambers checking on the pills when all of a sudden, the pills began flying by themselves. They rushed out of the chamber and disappeared into the sky," the middle-aged man said. "You are telling me that the pills flew away by themselves?" The lower jaws of the group of 5 fell to the ground. Just like spirit artifacts, while grade 6 pills did possess a spirit, it was impossible for them to move unless they had acknowledged a master. But making a pill acknowledge one as its master was far more difficult than making an artifact acknowledge one. It would be difficult for even an apothecary to do so, needless to say, others. More importantly, it was clearly impossible to make so many pills acknowledge someone as their master at the same time. Suddenly, Lu Feng recalled something, and he hurriedly asked, before the pills started flying, "Did anyone enter the pill chamber?" A young man in his 20s came by, saying that he wanted to take a look around. He went around touching each and every pill, but eventually, he left without buying a single one, the middle-aged man said after some contemplation. There weren't many people who could afford grade 6 pills, so there were rarely any customers at the pill chamber. That young man was the only guest he had seen the entire day, so he remembered him clearly. A young man in his 20s? Does he look like that? Lu Feng swiftly drew a picture of a young man in the air using his zhenqi. Naturally, the young man he drew was Zhongxian. Upon reaching Saint Realm, one would be able to accomplish many unimaginable feats with zhenqi, and drawing a picture in midair was only one of the many abilities. The middle-aged man quickly nodded. "Yes, that's him. As I expected." In that instant, Lu Feng's body shook uncontrollably, and he nearly went insane. He had been worrying that Zhongxian would reduce the apothecary school to ruins, just like the physician school, so he had been keeping his guard up against the latter. But who knew that, instead of destroying their school, he would end up taking their wealth instead. In order to forge those grade 6 pills, the 6-star apothecaries of the apothecary school had devoted incalculable time, effort, and most importantly of all, money, to the point that even school head Lu and the 4 vice school heads themselves were heavily in debt, waiting for the pills to be sold to earn back their money to clear their debt. But, just by touching each one, that fellow had all of those pills acknowledge him as their master and took them away. If the apothecary pavilion had collapsed, they could just rebuild it with the profit earned from selling those pills. On top of that, the Master Teacher Academy and the Apothecary Guild would also help to cover some of the cost of reparation as well. However, those pills were their personal property, so it was impossible to obtain any reparation from the Master Teacher Academy or the Apothecary Guild. In other words, with the disappearance of those pills, nearly all of the apothecaries in the apothecary school were currently bankrupt. Lu Feng clutched his chest tightly. "My heart, my lungs, my kidneys. Let's go over and take a look." The group hurriedly rushed to the pill chamber, only to see that the vast room was completely empty. As the pills had escaped on their own accord, they had no concrete evidence to prove that this was Zhongxian's doing. Thus, if the latter were to deny it vehemently, there would be nothing they could do either. Lu Feng turned to the middle-aged man and asked anxiously, "Do you know where the young man who touched the pills earlier went to?" As important as this matter was, it was of greater importance for them to track down Zhongxian and stop him from doing any more harm. After a moment of thought, the middle-aged man replied, "I'm not too sure. Judging from the direction he left in, I think he might have gone to the apothecary auditorium." Apothecary auditorium? Lu Feng's body shook. This is bad. Without any hesitation, he ran out of the pill chamber and rushed in the direction of the apothecary auditorium. With grim expressions as well, the 4 vice school heads hurriedly followed him. The apothecary auditorium was where most apothecaries listened to public lectures. It was where most of the students of the apothecary school usually spent their time. If that fellow were to go there and lecture like he did outside the library, there might very well be no one left in the entire apothecary school. Screw that. While that fellow had destroyed the buildings in the blacksmith school and physician school, the damage that he had caused could easily be resolved with ample money. On top of that, his deeds had also boosted the reputation of those schools, and there had been a rise in the number of students who applied for those two schools. But what he was doing in the apothecary school was completely different. If he were to conduct another lecture as he had done outside the library and all of the students withdrew from the apothecary school, a school with only teachers and no students at all would be as good as dead. In a school, the priority was always the student. Could a teacher without any students still be called a teacher? Screw that. It was already bad enough that he had taken all of the grade 6 pills in the pill chamber, but now, he was plotting to create an exodus in the apothecary school as well. That was as good as snapping the very roots that made the apothecary school itself. Lu Feng clutched his chest once more. My heart, my lungs, my kidney, my bladder. Moving as fast as they could, it took only 10 breaths for school head Lu and the vice school heads to arrive at the apothecary auditorium. What they saw before them left them on the brink of mental breakdown. The auditorium could hold more than several dozen thousand people simultaneously but was still usually densely packed with people. However, there was nary a human in sight at this very moment. Other than a cat or two here and there was not a single soul to be seen. Somehow, the emptiness seemed to reek of desolation, as if declaring that the era of glory that the apothecary school had once enjoyed was over. After searching around, school head Lu finally found the teacher in charge of managing the apothecary auditorium, and he rushed up to question him. Wu Laroche, where are the students? Where are the students? Wu Tian was a 6-star apothecary, one of the elders of the apothecary school. But instead of responding to school head Lu's question, Wu Laroche continued packing his luggage and said, School head, you came a timely moment. I was intending to head to your office to bid you farewell. Bid me farewell? Lu Feng's figure froze, and anxiety swiftly covered his entire face. Could it be due to that Zhongxian again? That's right. Wu Tian nodded with a light chuckle. Zhongshi's lecture has truly opened my eyes, so I acknowledged him as my teacher. From this day forth, I shall no longer be an elder of the apothecary school but an ordinary member of the Shenxian faction. I shall study hard there and aim to achieve a breakthrough as soon as I can. You have acknowledged him as your teacher? The edge of Lu Feng's lips twitched, and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. The fact that Wu Tian was a lecturer for several dozen thousand students reflected the extent of his capability and his standing in the apothecary school. Yet, a figure like him had actually acknowledged Zhongxian as his teacher. You must be freaking kidding me. Not only so, he was even willing to lower himself to become an ordinary member of the Shenxian faction. Tell me, just which screw in your head is loose? The Shenxian faction is only an ordinary student faction. What is an elder like you getting involved in it for? Alright, I will be taking my leave now. After Wu Tian finally finished packing up his items, he turned around and left decisively, devoid of any hesitation or wistfulness for the apothecary school. Wu Laroche, wait a moment. If you have acknowledged Zhongxian as your teacher, what about the other teachers? We should have around 40 teachers in the apothecary auditorium. Where did they go? School head Lu shouted after him. You might be an elder, an important existence to the apothecary school, but as long as the other teachers are around, we can surely survive even without you. But why is the entire area completely empty? Even if the students aren't around, surely the teachers should be. The others were far more decisive than I was. At this moment, they have probably already reported to the Shenxian faction. Alright, I really have to get going now. Otherwise, if I miss a lecture, I will lag behind the others. Wu Tian waved his hands before turning around and walking into the distance. All of them have reported to the Shenxian faction. Weakness suddenly assaulted Lu Feng, and he fell onto the floor on his bottom. At this instant, he didn't seem like a man who wielded immense power but a defeated old man. The hell? It is one thing for the students of the apothecary school to leave, but for you to actually take the teachers as your students as well. If that is going to be the case, you might as well demolish my entire apothecary school. Now that I am without students and teachers, what is the point of all of these facilities? Lu Feng and the 4 vice school heads glanced at one another in frenzy. No words could explain what they were feeling at this moment. School head, if you hadn't interfered in Yushu's matter, I think the most that would have happened to our apothecary school is only a few collapsed buildings. But this, what should we do now? Vice school head Ju sighed deeply. I don't know either. Lu Feng muttered with a blank look on his face. It was just a moment ago that he was doing all he could to prevent Zhong Xian from destroying the facilities of the apothecary school. However, at this instant, he found himself wishing for that to happen instead. The apothecary school was known as the #1 in the Master Teacher Academy due to its overwhelming number of students and excellent teaching staff. It was on this basis that he had become the de facto leader of the 10 great master teachers, the stand-in principal of the academy. But now that the only ones remaining in the academy were him and the vice school heads, his basis of power had vanished. Perhaps, the influence he had might even be beneath that of the Terpsichore school at this very instant. How did this befall him? My heart, my lungs, my kidneys, my bladder. Now even the opening to my bladder is hurting. Reluctant to give up just like that, Lu Feng gritted his teeth in determination and stood up. Let's head over to the Xianxian faction. I don't believe that a freshman like him can really win the loyalty of the 300 teachers and 60,000 students of our apothecary school. No matter what, he was a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, a figure who could possibly become a 7-star master teacher in the near future. Would he really lose to a mere freshman? All right. The other vice school heads nodded. The group followed Wu Laosh's figure, and after around 20 minutes later, they finally arrived at the dormitories of the freshmen, which also served as the headquarters of the Xianxian faction. Even from afar, one could see an enormous crowd gathered in the area. Standing guard at the main entrance were 3 mighty-looking grade 4 students, one wielding a spear, one wielding a saber, and the last one barehanded. They were the trio who had lost in the bet against Zhong Xian back then, Ying Qin, Bai Mian, and Yuan Gang. Seated on a stool right behind the entrance gate was a fatty. He held onto a basket in his hands as he shook his plump thighs casually in a crude manner. Upon seeing the group of 5, he immediately stood up and welcomed them. Oh, isn't this our great school head Lu? Are you intending to enter to listen to the lecture? That will be 1 high-tier spirit stone each. We don't discriminate over here, so we charge everyone the same price. What did you say? Lu Feng's cheeks twitched violently, and he nearly erupted on the spot. Upon hearing the argument, Zheng Yang stepped out and clasped his fist. School head Lu, since we are fellow elders of the Master Teacher Academy, I will dispense with the ceremonies and just address you as senior. Senior Lu, my teacher is currently imparting profound knowledge of pill forging, so anyone who wishes to listen to the lecture must pay the entrance fee. This is the rule, as well as a sign of respect for the teaching occupation as well. Uncle Sun is only abiding by the rules, so as juniors, I hope that you won't make things difficult for my uncle. Senior. Uncle Chong? Me, a junior? Lu Feng felt as if his entire world had turned dark. The hell? When in the world did my standing become even beneath that of a fatty who only knows how to collect money from others? Chapter 8:20 The downfall of the apothecary school 2-in-1. Knowing that the other party would only use a ton of twisted logic against him even if he were to argue over the matter of seniority, Lu Feng flung his sleeves furiously and changed the topic. We are not here to listen to the lecture. Zhong Xian has hoodwinked the students and staff of our apothecary school, so we are here to see what kind of underhanded means he used to lure them here. If you are here for the lecture, just say so. Stop coming up with such pathetic excuses. But no matter what you say today, you will have to pay the entrance fee to enter. Otherwise, with a shout, I believe that there are many students here who will be more than willing to see the valiant figure of the stand-in principal refusing to pay the entrance fee to a lecture. Sun Qiong said as he stretched his back lazily. You. Lu Feng's nails sank deep into his flesh. If the fellow really started shouting then, the reputation which he had built up painstakingly over the years would really dissipate into nothing. Just the shame of it could easily kill him. School head, let's just get in first. Knowing that the school head had already lost his cool, Vice School Head Ju stepped forward and passed 5 high-tier spirit stones over. Here. That's more like it. Sun Qiong's eyes lit up. The members of the Xianxian faction weren't charged for the lectures, and there weren't too many outsiders attending the lecture either. The several dozen thousand students and teachers from the apothecary school had all chosen to join the Shenxian faction. It wasn't easy for him to find someone to profit from, so naturally, he wanted to take a bit more from them. In any case, the apothecary school had already fallen out with the young master, so there was no longer any need to keep up a front before them. Besides, the esteemed head of the apothecary school probably couldn't abandon his dignity and squabble with the uncle of the guest elders of the academy. Well, even if he did, that would be great too. He could make full use of this opportunity to return the favor in the young master's stead. After all, he had seen for himself how arrogant the other party was earlier in the morning. Humph. Seeing Vice School head Ju pay the spirit stones, Lu Feng harumphed coldly and walked in, paying no heed to the excited Sun Qiong. The living quarters of the freshman was considerably large. Even though it was housing tens of thousands of people, it wasn't cramped at all. Lu Feng had barely taken a few steps through the entrance when he suddenly caught sight of a figure who made him stop in his tracks, and his eyes narrowed in astonishment. "Apothecary Lu, why are you here?" At the back of the crowd, an old man was currently looking ahead of him with eyes gleaming in excitement. Upon hearing someone call him, the old man turned around. He was no other than one of the most esteemed elders in the apothecary school, Apothecary Lu Yi. Apothecary Lu Yi was barely younger than Yu Shu, aged in his 900s. He was one of the oldest elders in the apothecary school, and over the years, he had contributed greatly to it in all aspects. Stuck at a bottleneck, he had spent the past 30 years of his life secluded in his residence to study. He had rarely appeared in public, such that even many of the seniors were unaware of his existence. Even in the annual Grand Apothecary Impartation Symposium, which Apothecary Lu himself had initiated, one of the most prestigious events in the apothecary school, he had been absent. Why was he suddenly here? Shush, don't speak. Just listen. Marvelous, this is indeed marvelous. To think that even such simple logic can be incorporated into pill forging as well, unbelievable. Waving his hands impatiently, Apothecary Lu Yi ignored school head Lu and turned his attention back to the stage. Apothecary Lu. Dark lines streaked across the furious Lu Feng's face. He stepped forward to call out to Lu Yi once more, but at that instant, Vice School head Wei suddenly tugged at his robe and said, "School head, look at Apothecary Lu's clothes." His clothes. Lu Feng hurriedly turned his glance over, and what he saw left his mouth twitching endlessly. As an elder of the apothecary school, naturally, he was still dressed in the master-teacher robe. However, two huge words were weaved on his chest, Shenxian faction. Clearly, even he had joined the student faction as well. It's not only Apothecary Lu. School head, take a look around us, Vice School head Wei said as he gestured to the surroundings. Lu Feng hurriedly looked around, and he immediately saw a few familiar figures amid the crowd. Apothecary Bai. Wasn't he exploring the world? The last time I invited him to conduct a lecture, his face grew so dark that it seemed as if I was forcing him to commit suicide. Why would he be wearing the robe of the Shenxian faction? Apothecary Ren, his clear flame pill forging technique is currently the most popular class in the apothecary school, and he is one of the teachers who has contributed immensely to the growth of the school as well. He's even on the list of the most respected teachers in the academy. He joined the Shenxian faction as well? That is Apothecary Qiu. I even studied from him at one point. With every figure he saw, school head Lu's face turned a shade darker. By the time he was done, he felt as if the string of sanity in his head was going to snap. There were a few esteemed retired old teachers in the apothecary school whom even he didn't have the authority to mobilize, and yet, here they were, having joined the Shenxian faction voluntarily. To think the influence of a mere student faction would be greater than that of a stand-in principal like him. More importantly, every single of them was completely enraptured by the lecture, pricking up their ears for fear that they might miss a single word. What was this insanity before him? Had the world gone mad? Just as Lu Feng thought that he might really go mad at that very instant, Vice School head Wei suddenly nudged him and pointed forward. School head, isn't that Lu Hui? Once again, Lu Feng felt as if his sanity was pushed a step closer to the edge of a cliff. Amidst the crowd, he saw a young man looking at the stage excitedly, as if he was going to meet his idol. Who else could it be other than his direct disciple who had reported Zhongshen's presence in the apothecary school earlier to him, Lu Hui? When they left for the apothecary pavilion, they had left Lu Hui to take care of the library. When did the other party sneak here? And what was with the Shenshen faction uniform he was wearing? They had only parted a few moments ago. Did he really betray them in such a short period of time? Lu Hui. Lu Feng bellowed furiously. Hearing that voice, Lu Hui noticed that his teacher was there too. He hurriedly squeezed through the crowd to head toward his teacher and bowed deeply. Teacher, I saw that there were many students of our school heading here to listen to the lecture, so I couldn't help but tag along as well. Listening to Zhongshe's lecture, I thought that it was amazing, so I joined the Shenshen faction as well. Fearing that his teacher would blame him, he hurriedly tried to explain himself. Wonderful. Wonderful. Lu Feng's face grew so red that it seemed as if blood was going to ooze from his skin. Are you going to withdraw from my tutelage too? I will be truly grateful if teacher can grant me that. Lu Hui bowed deeply. Grant your head. Clenching his jaws tightly, Lu Feng really felt like strangling the young man before him at that very instant. It was just a moment ago that the other party had been reporting Zhongshen's activities to him, but 10 minutes later, the other party suddenly turned on him. Are you really my direct disciple? Unable to take it any longer, Lu Feng turned his gaze to the young man on the stage. Humph, let me see what kind of sorcery that fellow used to make all of you so utterly enamored by him. At this moment, the young man on the stage had already completed his lecture, and he was in the midst of answering questions. Zhongshe, when I forge the refining yang pill, the pill often turns yellow upon formation. May I know if there is any solution to that? Asked one of the apothecaries amid the crowd. In order to bring out the true essence of the refining yang pill, the apothecary forging the pill must be rich in yang energy as well. Even though there's no problem in your cultivation, a trauma that you suffered when you were younger has resulted in a lingering surge of cold energy within your body, leading to physical frailty. As such, you lack the vitality to forge such a pill. Even if you are able to form the pill, it is unlikely for the pill to harness much medicinal energy. At this point, the young man on the stage glanced at the apothecary in the crowd and asked, if I'm not mistaken, the refining yang pills you forge aren't very effective, are they? The apothecary hurriedly nodded. That's right. The other party's analysis was spot on. Since you have joined the Shenshen faction, you are one of us, and I can't possibly give up on our own members. Alright, I will give you this grade 6 searing yang pill then. With this, you should be able to expel the cold energy in your body easily. Once you do so, you won't face any problems forging the refining yang pill anymore. On top of that, you should be able to make the breakthrough to Chrysalis realm as well. Zhongshen flicked his finger, and a pill flew toward the apothecary. Seeing that pill, Vice School head Wei's lips twitched. That pill is mine. He recognized the pill. It was the one he had forged and stored at the pill chamber to be sold. Yes. However, no one paid any heed to Vice School head Wei's exclamation. The apothecary caught the pill and consumed it immediately. Goo 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 goo. Not too long later, spiritual energy gushed into him, and with a deafening roar, his aura suddenly surged furiously, soaring into the clouds. Chrysalis realm, reached. Thank you, Zhongshe. Not expecting that he would be able to achieve a breakthrough on top of resolving an existing trauma he was suffering from, the apothecary immediately kneeled onto the floor and kowtowed out of gratitude. Zhongshe, I. The next moment, a few more people raised their hands and asked their questions. It was as if the young man had a pair of eyes that could peer through the essence of the world. He could easily tell what kind of constitution everyone had, and he could analyze the root of their problems and answer their questions easily. When he encountered those who seemed to be on the brink of a breakthrough, he would also bestow them with a grade 6 pill without any hesitation. The sound of breakthroughs sounded endlessly beneath the stage. Looking at that sight, Lu Feng and the Vice School heads couldn't help but feel their hearts ache. Those grade 6 pills that the young man was giving out freely had been forged painstakingly by them. They had invested a huge amount of time, effort, and money for them, and each of them was worth a fortune. Yet, this fellow was giving them out so casually like that. The more Lu Feng thought about it, the more furious he felt. But he knew that if he were to rush forward to demand those pills be returned to him, he would surely be kicked out by the students and teachers in the crowd, and his reputation would be shattered as well. Let's return. Gritting his teeth, school head Lu turned around and left. Not only did the other party steal away his students and teachers, the other party even made use of his pills to win their hearts and loyalty. How could he possibly keep his calm before this? If he were to watch on, he might just die of anger, but if he were to report this to the master-teacher pavilion, it would just make him appear petty in comparison. After all, the main purpose of pills wasn't to serve as decoration within a chamber but to benefit humanity. Not to mention, he was the head of the apothecary school, and the pills were being distributed to benefit the students of the apothecary school. The other party might be making use of his pills to win the hearts of the populace, but even he had to admit that the other party had distributed them in an ideal manner. Each of those pills were given to the person who needed it the most, thus maximizing their worth. Return, the vice school heads asked blankly. Aren't we going to cause some trouble and coax the students to come back with us? We are going to leave like that, without doing anything. What else do you think we can do? Do you really think it's possible for us to coax the students back with us given the current state of affairs? School head Lu spat through gritted teeth. This. The vice school heads took a look at the crowd around them and subconsciously shook their heads. Judging from the delighted faces among the crowd, they wouldn't even be able to coax the teachers to leave with them, let alone the students. What do we do now? Considering that the teachers and students were all there, the apothecary school was nothing more than an empty shell at this point. What do we do? We shall hold an elder conference, Lu Feng said resolutely. The other party had already captured the hearts of several 10,000 students. Even he didn't dare to provoke him at the moment, so the only thing they could do at the moment was to hold an elder conference when they returned to decide on a countermeasure. Otherwise, if both teachers and students began acting out of their places, what would become of the Master Teacher Academy? Yes. Vice School Head Wei nodded. If this problem wasn't resolved, the Master Teacher Academy could be in for great trouble. What was this? To think that the Master Teacher Academy would face such a serious problem over a single Yushu. If he could, he would really have wanted to chop that fellow into pieces. Let's return. Having come to a decision, the five of them turned around and left. After leaving the Shenxian faction, they returned back to the apothecary school. However, watching the previously bustling school become devoid of any life, they couldn't help but feel like crying. When had the apothecary school been in such a pathetic state before? After a moment of silence, Vice School Head Ju asked, School Head, why don't you apologize to Zhongshe? Otherwise, this might really just be the end of our apothecary school. Apologize to him? Dream on. Lu Feng clenched his teeth furiously. Wait here for a moment, I'll gather the 10 great master teachers right now for an urgent meeting. No, I should call Musha over too. If I don't make that law-breaking fellow pay for this, I will abandon my surname Lu. In the tallest tower in the Master Teacher Academy, there was an exquisite room. In that room was a long oval table with 13 seats, and at this very moment, 10 of them were filled up. School Head Lu, why did you gather us so urgently? School Head Mo asked. In the current batch of freshmen, there is a student named Zhong Xian. I believe that everyone here should have heard of him, naturally. With the exception of Mu Yuan, who frowned upon hearing the name, the other school heads nodded. Ever since arriving in the academy, the only time that he had headed out was when he sensed Byzantium Alio's beast's aura. Other than that, he spent nearly all of his time cultivating in his residence. As a result, he hadn't heard of the affairs regarding Zhong Xian before. Musha, this Zhong Xian is. School Head Mo swiftly explained the matter to the other party. Musha's eyes lit up upon hearing the introduction. A master teacher who has comprehended the eye of insight. Such a genius has appeared in the Master Teacher Academy, clearing the records of the blacksmith school and physician school and defeating Yushu in a life-and-death physician duel meant nothing to him. After all, those were merely supporting occupations. To Musha, what he thought was the most important was one's aptitude as a master teacher itself. A master teacher who had comprehended the Eye of Insight would eventually become an incredible force in the master teacher continent as long as they didn't fall. Not even a single talent of such caliber would appear in the sage clans once in a millennium. Seeing the excited gleam in Musha's eyes, Lu Feng hurriedly interjected. Musha, please allow me to continue first before you make your judgment. I acknowledge the fact that Zhongxian is indeed an incredible talent, and his appearance would be a blessing to the Master Teacher Academy if he were to use his power for good. However, if he were to use his power for evil instead, he could easily destroy the Master Teacher Academy and the millenniums of history behind it. Use his power for evil. Musha frowned for a moment before nodding. The Eye of Insight allowed one to see past falsehood and peer into the essence of things. If he were to use it as a tool to guide others down the right path, he would definitely become a valuable aid to humanity, but if he were to use it for evil, that could potentially end in a catastrophe. Even though such matters weren't recorded in the annals, there had indeed been cases where talented master teachers had betrayed humanity. 7,000 years ago, a genius of humble background had succeeded in clearing the 7-star master teacher examination before 30, causing a huge uproar at that moment. Just when everyone had thought that he would become a pillar of humanity, the Master Teacher Pavilion made a misjudgment on a matter and wronged him. Out of rage, that genius hunted down the 37 master teachers who were involved in the matter and slaughtered them. The shock wave of that battle reduced an entire capital extending over a radius of 3,000 li into dust, and over 100 million people had lost their lives. The resulting destruction was not beneath that of an invasion from an army of 10,000 otherworldly demons. Due to the severe aftermath, the Master Teacher Pavilion couldn't cover for him either. Thus, they issued a Master Teacher Pursuit Decree, dispatching high-ranked Master Teachers to hunt him down. Knowing that a pursuit decree had been released, that genius had fled to the borders and lured over 9,000 6-star Master Teachers and above into a trap laid by the otherworldly demons at Fubua Ridge. That was truly a gruesome battle. Even though they had succeeded in killing that genius eventually, the Master Teacher Pavilion had also suffered heavy damage in return. 3 8-star Master Teachers, 134 7-star Master Teachers, and 7,612 6-star Master Teachers died in the clash. Eventually, the others named it the Calamity of Fubua. That could be said to be one of the greatest blows the Master Teacher Pavilion had suffered ever since Kongsha unified the Master Teacher continent. It had taken a long time for the Master Teacher Pavilion to recover from the aftermath of the matter. Due to that matter, the Master Teacher Pavilion had also altered their recruitment rules as well. On top of considering talent, character and morals were also important aspects to be assessed as well. If one had a poor character and was immoral, the more resources the Master Teacher Pavilion devoted into grooming one, the greater the danger humanity would be in. The number of master teachers who had possessed the Eye of Insight was few, even considering the long history of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Each of them were top-notch talents, figures who had rattled the Master Teacher continent in their era. If they were to use their power for justice, humanity could be brought to greater heights. However, if they were to turn to evil, the destruction they could potentially cause was far greater than the calamity of Fubua. Could it be that the Zhongxian you all spoke of has poor character and is immoral? Musha asked doubtfully. If that was the case, they would really have to tread carefully. Otherwise, they would be bringing a great calamity upon the Master Teacher continent. How is that possible? Hearing those words, School Head Mo exclaimed with indignation. In order to allow more students to enroll at the Master Teacher Academy and bolster the forces of humanity, Zhongsha gave away the 40,000 points he had accumulated to others without asking for anything in return. How could a person with such magnanimity possibly turn to evil? School Head Mo, I have to ask of you not to be fooled by appearances. His doings are a clear attempt to rally the freshmen to his side so that he could establish his Xianxian faction. Lu Feng waved his hands. Xianxian faction? Musha asked doubtfully. The Xianxian faction is the student faction established by Zhongxian. Student factions serve as a tool of cohesion to promote camaraderie among master teachers, allowing them to work together toward improving themselves. As such, the Academy has imposed no restrictions toward them. However, it hasn't been long since that fellow enrolled in the Academy, but he is already going around trying to win the hearts of the students to gather accomplices for his misdeeds in the academy. It is clear that he has malicious intentions at heart, Lu Feng said. School head Lu, as a master teacher, you should watch your words. School head Mo's face darkened. What do you mean gather accomplices for his misdeeds? Just because a group of students have gathered together means that they are up to no good. Based on my sources, it appears that Zhongshe was unaware of the formation of the Xianxian faction. It was under the oppression of the seniors that led to the freshmen banding together, and as the most outstanding student among the freshmen, they nominated Zhongshe to be their leader. Wei Ranxue's complexion looked awful as well. Given the influence that master teachers wielded, it was imperative that they had to be particularly careful with what they spoke, especially when there was no concrete evidence. Otherwise, an innocent man could possibly be convicted as a result of that. Watch my words. I am already watching my words very carefully. Since it has come to this, I shall not hide it anymore then. I will tell you all what happened today, and you can evaluate it for yourselves and see whether I have framed him or not. Harumphing coldly, Lu Feng swiftly told the group what he had gone through that day. You are saying that all of the teachers and students of the apothecary school have joined the Xianxian faction, and even the old elders are no exception to that. So, the apothecary school is currently nothing more than an empty shell? The room abruptly turned silent. The 10 school heads along with Mu She were dumbfounded. Why did it feel as if they were listening to an unbelievable story instead? Indeed. What is most important to a master teacher is their lineage. To make so many people withdraw from the tutelage simultaneously just to join a student faction, there is no doubt that fellow resorted to some underhanded means. Lu Feng's face warped in savagery. If we don't deal with him soon, he could do the same to the other schools as well. Before long, all of the teachers and students in the Master Teacher Academy might soon be his students. If that were to happen, the academy would become nothing more than his plaything. Everyone fell silent. Even school head Mo, school head Zhao, and the others were shocked beyond words. Honestly, they thought that what Zhongshe had done so far, breaking the records of their schools and destroying their buildings, were already extremely fearsome. Who could have thought that he could even abduct all of the teachers and students from the apothecary school with just a lecture? That was way too terrifying. Wouldn't everyone in the school become his student or grandstudent if he were to conduct a few more lectures? After a moment of silence, Mu She asked grimly, "Have you heard his lecture?" Zhong Xian allows the members of his Xianxian faction to listen to his lecture for free, but for outsiders, they would have to pay an extremely steep entrance fee to enter. I, Zhu Qing, and the other vice school heads of the apothecary school had to pay a high-tier spirit stone each just to enter. Lu Feng harumphed coldly. Naturally, we heard his lecture as well, but his standards can only be said to be subpar. Putting aside the fact that it's complete nonsense, most of what he said was just propaganda to beguile the others into following him. Subpar? Mu She frowned. That's right. Also, didn't I mention that he resorted to despicable means to steal the grade 6 pills from our pill chamber? In order to win their support, he gave away the pills to students who were on the verge of a breakthrough just to create a false impression of magnanimity before his followers. Lu Feng recounted his version of events of what he had seen in the Xianxian faction. Giving away those pills to those who require them can be considered a merit, but if he intended to use it to win the support of others, that would paint a completely different picture of the matter. Mu She nodded gravely. The Master Teacher Academy was a ground to groom students to become pillars of support for humanity, so it was surely a joyful event to see the students growing swiftly. However, if Zhong Xian had intended to use those stolen pills as a means to rally others to support him, that could only mean that he lacked righteousness. He must be up to no good, Lu Feng added. Otherwise, how can a man make so many students and teachers be so loyal to him over the course of just a few hours? Mu She shook his head. Every cultivator is unique. They have their own expertise and understanding of the world, so the lessons they need are different as well. This is the reason Kong She proposed the concept of teaching to the individual. To win the acknowledgement of all of the teachers and students through a single lecture and convince them to join the Xianxian faction is indeed not quite possible. No matter how formidable a master teacher may be, it was impossible for him to win over everyone. After all, humans were unlike money, they were incapable of making everyone love them. Yet, that Zhongshe actually managed to do it. It couldn't help but introduce doubts that he might have resorted to some other underhanded means instead. Since this matter has happened in your apothecary school, how do you intend to deal with it? Mu Shi turned to Lu Feng and asked. My intentions are simple. I wish for the 10 schools to come to a consensus to evict Zhongxian out of the Master Teacher Academy, prohibiting him from taking even a single step into its premises. Lu Feng coldly sneered, after which, he shall be stripped of his Master Teacher license, banned from taking any Master Teacher examinations for life. Chapter 821. Quasi-6-star Apothecary evict him from the Master Teacher Academy. Strip him of his Master Teacher license, banning him from taking the Master Teacher examination for life. Everyone was stunned. No, that is definitely out of question. School head Mo bellowed furiously. If that were to happen, putting aside the fact that the Master Teacher Pavilion would lose a precious talent, just the thought of how Zhongshe's mysterious teacher would respond to it was enough to send shivers down his spine. Perhaps, the Master Teacher Academy might be completely obliterated with a wave of his hand. The higher ranked a Master Teacher was, the more esteemed they became. Even though the Master Teacher Pavilion sought to uphold justice and fairness, it still had practical concerns to consider. Take for example, 100,000 6-star Master Teacher might be a valuable asset to the Master Teacher Pavilion, but their value was still far beneath that of a 9-star Master Teacher. Or taking Kong Shi as example, he was a genius that only appeared once in several dozen thousand years. Putting aside a 9-star Master Teacher, not even 100 9-star Master Teachers could possibly achieve what he had contributed to humanity in his time. If Mo Gaoyuan was right and Zhongshe's teacher was an 8-star Master Teacher or above, if the latter were to obliterate the Master Teacher Academy with a slap of his hand, it was likely that the Master Teacher Pavilion wouldn't utter a word of complaint. It was unfair, but this was the kind of privilege that top-tier Master Teachers possessed. After all, there were still many threats that humanity faced where their strength was required. Stripping a Master Teacher's license concerns his entire future. This is not something we can take lightly. Zhao Bingshu spoke up as well. This is especially so when the person in question is a talented individual. If we handle this inappropriately, I fear that what we will lose is not just a genius. We might risk bringing upon ourselves another calamity of Fubwa. Hearing those words, everyone fell silent. In truth, the calamity of Fubwa could have been avoided. It was due to that genius offending the offspring of a sage clan and having no backers to support him that he was eventually forced into a corner, resulting in the eventual tragedy. Considering that Zhongxian had already awakened his eye of insight before he had even reached 6-star was testimony to his immense talent. If they were to push him too far and breed malice toward humanity within him, Zhongxian could possibly choose to side with the otherworldly demons out of fury. With his prowess, that could spell calamity for humanity. Putting everything aside, with his eye of insight, he could possibly become another Kong Shi, but for the otherworldly demons this time around. If so, humanity would be in deep trouble. School head Zhao is right. Mu Shi nodded. Fine, we can put aside the matter of taking away his Master Teacher license. However, we have to evict from the Master Teacher Academy and Hongyuan City. Since he single-handedly brought about the downfall of my apothecary school today, he could easily do the same to the other schools tomorrow. By then, what will become of our Master Teacher Academy? Lu Feng said with gritted teeth. There was no one who had a response to Lu Feng's words. Even school head Mo, Wei Ranxue, and the others who favored Zhongxian couldn't find any words to respond to that. Honestly speaking, given Zhongxian's nature, it was very possible that he might wreak havoc in the other schools after he was done with the apothecary school. It was as if he was an ox pulling a plough behind him. It seemed as if he just wouldn't be content until he overturned everything in his path. Furthermore, after what he had done to the apothecary school, there was no one in the academy who could confidently say that they could stop him. After a moment of silence, an old man spoke up. I concur with school head Lu's judgment. This kind of trouble should be chased away as soon as possible. Putting aside Hongyuan City, we shouldn't even allow him to remain within Hongyuan Empire. The head of the Formation Master School, Chen Chengxuan. School head Chen had always maintained close ties with school head Lu, and they often stood on the same ground for most affairs. Another school head nodded in agreement. I concur as well. The head of the painter school, Song Danqing. I disagree. The purpose of those tests in the Master Teacher Academy is for them to be challenged, and there are no rules banning students conducting lectures either. Zhong Shi's doings might be exaggerated, but he hasn't done anything that infringed on the rules. What right do we have to evict him? School head Mo argued. Indeed. His deeds in the apothecary school might seem ridiculous, but as you have said, even a veteran elder like Apothecary Lu chose to join the Shenxian faction to listen to his lectures. This shows that, unlike what you have claimed, there is an extremely high value to his lectures. As master teachers, we should be magnanimous. For someone of Zhong Shi's capability, I think that not only should we not chase him away, we should even keep him in the academy as one of our teachers. Just imagine the heights he could bring our Master Teacher Academy to. Zhao Bingxiu and Wei Ranxue also spoke up. After which, school head Zhong of the physician school expressed his disapproval of the motion, whereas school head Feng of the celestial designer school expressed his approval. After hearing their words, Mu Shi turned to the remaining two in the room. So far, it's 4-4 and 4 against. What about you two? Currently, Lu Feng of the apothecary school, Chen Chengxuan of the formation master school, Song Danqing of the painter school, and school head Feng of the celestial school were in support of evicting Zhong Xian from the Master Teacher Academy, whereas school head Mo, school head Zhao, school head Wei, and school head Zhong were against it. Only two more men hadn't expressed their views yet, the head of the martial arts school, Xu Changqing, and the head of the demonic tunist school, Jiang Qingqin. Zhong Shi's students are currently the guest elders of our martial arts school. Since even his students have such a deep insight into battle techniques, nothing needs to be said about him. My view is that we should have Zhong Shi remain, Xu Changqing said. What about you? Mu Shi asked. Everyone turned their sights to Jiang Qingqin. It was 5 against 4. If the other party were to vote in favor of Lu Feng, it would lead to a 5 against 5, a draw, and there might be another round of voting in the near future. Otherwise, the motion would be scrapped entirely. I haven't met Zhong Xian for myself, so I don't think I am in a good position to pass judgment on him. Thus, I will refrain from voting, Jiang Qingqin said. Besides, the most important matter we have at hand isn't to deal with a single student of the academy but to find senior Byzantium alios. Refrain from voting? That's quite a wise decision. It's still too early to see who is right and who is wrong, so it might be better to back out for the moment. School head Jiang has never been concerned about worldly affairs, so it's not too surprising that he wants to stay out of this matter. The others nodded in response. The head of the demonist tunist school, Jiang Qingqin, had always been nonchalant about the world around him, choosing to stay out of troublesome affairs whenever possible. It was within the expectations of the other school heads that he would stay out of the voting. Since the current vote is 5-4, this motion will be scrapped. For the time being, everyone should focus their efforts on finding Byzantium alios bis. Announcing the verdict, Mu Shi waved his hands. Just as I have said before, the person who finds Byzantium alios beast will be the next principal. As for the matter regarding Zhong Xian, I shall leave it to the next principal to decide how to deal with him. Even though Mu Shi was a 7-star master teacher from the headquarters, he was ultimately still an outsider in this matter. It would still be for the best to allow the Master Teacher Academy to resolve the matter among themselves. Otherwise, he could possibly be cast under suspicion of exploiting his authority. Upon hearing the conclusion of the matter, Lu Feng panicked, and he hurriedly turned to Mu Shi with an indignant look on his face. Mu Shi. All right, this matter is already settled. Dismissed. Unwilling to speak any further, Mu Shi waved his hands and walked out of the room. Farewell. Following which, school head Mo, school head Zhao, and the others left as well. Soon, Lu Feng was the only one remaining in the room. Amid the deafening silence, his face warped savagely, and he clenched his fists tightly. Damn it. Furious, he slammed his fist on the table. Fine, I will let you get away for now. However, you'd better pray that you don't slip up. Otherwise, I will make your life a living hell. Lu Feng roared furiously. While Lu Feng was reporting the matter to the 10 great master teachers, Zhongxian finally finished with his lecture as well. Back then, when he had been standing before the library of the apothecary school, he hadn't been standing in a daze. Rather, he had been using his soul to gather all of the books within into his library of heaven's path. As a 4-star apothecary, he had been able to skip right to the 4-star and 5-star books. As such, it had only taken him an hour to successfully compile the 5-star and 6-star Heaven's Path manual. After studying the manuals, he'd suddenly felt a surge of inspiration, so he'd begun lecturing right outside the library. The content he had spoken of was profound yet easy to understand, interpreting the essence of pill forging directly. The crowd in the surroundings couldn't help but be drawn in by his words. This was also the reason behind the first exodus of the apothecary school to the Shenxian faction. After he was done, Zhongxian had first gone to the pill chamber, hoping that there might be a grand intermittence pill there. However, to his disappointment, there was nothing of the sort there. Nevertheless, not wanting to make a trip for nothing, he decided to take the grade 6 pills with him so as to return the favor to Lu Feng. Following which, he had headed straight for the ancestral hall, where the pill debate examination was conducted. Just as Vice School Head Wei Yi and the others had seen, he had activated the communication jade screen, not only to clear the pill debate but also to request the pill formula of the grand intermittence pill as well. Without any experience in pill forging, it would have been impossible for Zhongxian to pass the practical examination. However, if it was just a pill debate, given his thorough understanding and deep insight into pill forging, not even a 7-star apothecary would be a match for him. In the pill debate, he had utterly crushed the 7-star apothecaries on the other end of the screen and received his quasi-6-star apothecary emblem, as well as the pill formula of the grand intermittence pill. Having achieved what he had gone for, Zhongxian had initially intended to leave. However, recalling how he had taken so many grade 6 pills for nothing, he'd still felt a little guilty. After all, his grudge was with Lu Feng, not with the apothecary school. However, the matter was already done. Thus, he had gone to the apothecary symposium to conduct a lecture as a form of compensation to the apothecary school. Who knew that his lecture would end up awing both students and teachers alike? As a result, the grand sight of countless elders, teachers, and students abandoning the apothecary school for the Shenxian faction had come to be. As for the matters regarding the uniform and the entrance fee, those were Ruo Huangongzi and Sun Qiong's doing. So, this is the key to forging the delight harnessing pill. I finally get it. I feel that with my current comprehension of pill forging, as long as my cultivation reaches the required level, I will surely be able to forge a grade 6 pill. This lecture has truly benefited me greatly. It's as good as 3 years' hard work on my part. While Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief and departed from the stage, the apothecaries beneath the stage had intoxicated expressions on their faces, still immersed in the lecture they had just heard. Zhongshi's lecture had been random and abrupt, raising points on the unexpected aspects of pill forging. However, his words eventually tied together perfectly like puzzle pieces to form a profound picture of pill forging, giving the listeners a striking and deep insight into the essence of pill forging. As long as they were to ruminate over his words carefully and decipher them, their proficiency in pill forging would surely rise immensely in the short run. It was just a single lecture, but it was equivalent to several years of their hard work. Genius. He's truly a genius. To think that pill forging can be interpreted from such an angle as well. Apothecary Lu stood beside some of the other old elders of the apothecary school as they discussed Zhongshi's lecture, and the more they spoke, the more astonished they became. At their age, it was already far too difficult for them to make a breakthrough. If only they had listened to such a lecture 10 years earlier, every single one of them would have been 7-star apothecaries by now. From now on, I am a member of the Shenxian faction. I will never ever return to the apothecary school. Me too. I would rather remain here to listen to Zhongshi's amazing lectures than rot away in the apothecary school. Perhaps, if we listen to a few more, we might just be able to pass our 7-star apothecary examinations. Just when the few elders were overwhelmed with excitement, they suddenly saw the young man who had just lectured them abruptly walking toward them. Zhongshi. The elders clasped their fists and bowed politely. There's no need to stand on ceremony. I am here to request something of you all, Zhongxian said. Feel free to speak, Zhongshe. As long as it's within the means of old bones like us, we will surely give it our best. Even though they weren't students of the academy, they had become completely impressed by the young man before them after hearing the lecture as well. Thank you, but it's actually not that much. I just need you all to collaborate together and forge a pill for me. Zhongxian revealed his motive. Collaborate together? The group was stunned. Despite the profound understanding of pill forging that the young man before him had, he still needed their help. That's right. I wish to forge the Grand Intermittence Pill, Zhongxian said. Grand Intermittence Pill? A grade 7 pill? Apothecary Lu exclaimed in shock. Chapter 822. Phoenix Timber Core Grand Intermittence Pill was extremely well known for its miraculous ability in allowing one to regrow even severed limbs. But naturally, it was an extremely difficult pill to forge as well. Even among grade 7 pills, it could be considered one of the more advanced ones. It would be difficult for even an average 7-star apothecary to forge it, so how could they possibly succeed? For all upper 9 paths occupations, the difference between each rank became exponentially larger the higher one climbed. Even though it was only a single rank of difference between 6-star and 7-star, it was like the difference between a saint and a transcendent mortal. There was an unbreachable gap between the two. In fact, even within the rank itself, there was a vast difference in the capability between low tier and pinnacle. In other words, even though they were all 6-star pinnacle apothecaries, just a toe away from achieving a breakthrough to 7-star, it was still utterly impossible for them to forge the Grand Intermittence Pill, which only 7-star pinnacle apothecaries were capable of forging. With a bitter smile, Apothecary Lu shook his head. I'm afraid that we might not be of much help here. I know that it's difficult, that's why I need you to work together with one another, Zhongxian replied. Work together? But we have never worked together before, it won't be easy to do so. The group shook their heads. Pill forging wasn't like fighting a battle, where each cultivator just had to cover for one another. Every single apothecary had their own unique pill forging technique and style. It was more likely than not that if 2 apothecaries tried to work on the same cauldron, a major error would occur somewhere. This could easily lead to all of the medicinal herbs being ruined, or in the worst-case scenario, a cauldron explosion even. That was not to say that it was completely impossible for apothecaries to work together on the same cauldron. There were such cases in the world, but most of them were students who had been training to work with each other from the very start, and after several dozen years of collaboration, they gained the ability to understand one another by the slightest gesture or gaze, allowing them to synergize with each other perfectly. But on the other hand, Apothecary Lu and the others had already tread on their own path for several centuries now, and they had their own unique forging style tailored to their own needs. If they were to forcefully work with one another, it was one thing for them to fail in forming the pill, but in the worst-case scenario, they might even end up blowing away the entire Master-Teacher Academy. As one of the more advanced grade 7 pills, the medicinal energy contained within a Grand Intermittence Pill was comparable to the might of a Saint 4 Dan expert. If a mistake were to occur, with their cultivation of Saint 1 Dan, it would be impossible for them to suppress the explosion. There's no need to worry about that. I have a few pill forging techniques here that are suited for just that, so I hope that you can familiarize yourselves with them quickly. As for the collaboration, as long as you listen to my instructions strictly, there won't be any problem with it, Zhongxian said as he whipped out a few books and passed them over. These were the pill forging techniques he had deduced that he would require for the forging of the Grand Intermittence Pill. Pill forging techniques? Apothecary Lu and the others grabbed the books given to them and began browsing through them. Each of them took a different book each, and the content of each book was different as well. Misty Rain Pill Forging Art. It didn't take too long for Apothecary Lu to finish browsing through his book, and by the time he was done, his hands were trembling intensely. The Misty Rain Pill Forging Art was centered around stability, taming whatever destructive force it encountered while silently nourishing the pill. The technique was extremely profound and intricate. Despite Apothecary Lu's many years of experience, he had never seen anything like it before. Without a doubt, if he were to successfully master this technique, his proficiency of pill forging would soar once again. By then, as long as his cultivation hit the requirement, he was confident that he would clear the 7-star apothecary examination easily. But what had truly left him astounded was that the misty rain pill forging art complemented his cultivation technique perfectly. If he were to master this technique, even his fighting prowess would be enhanced as well. This is truly a good pill forging technique. It complements my spirit turtle Jinchi splendidly. The pill forging technique in the book supplements my cultivation technique impeccably too. After reading their own books, the eyes of the others were also glowing, and they couldn't help but exclaim in excitement. Hearing those words, Apothecary Lu took the books of his other friends and browsed through them swiftly as well, and his eyes couldn't help but widen. He realized that the pill forging techniques listed in the books were a perfect fit for their individual cultivation techniques and constitutions, such that he couldn't pick a single flaw from it. In other words, Zhongshe had designed these pill forging techniques specifically for them. Otherwise, considering how each cultivator had his own unique cultivation technique and constitution, how could there be such a coincidence that all of them would have a pill forging technique that was a perfect fit for them? But to tailor a pill forging technique to the needs of another, just how deep of an understanding must one have of pill forging to be able to do so? Even the most capable 7-star pinnacle apothecaries were incapable of such. This. Naturally, since Apothecary Lu had noticed this much, the others couldn't possibly remain oblivious to it. With eyes widened with respect and awe, they gazed deeply at the young man before them. They had thought that the other party was amazing when they were listening to his lecture, but at this moment, what they had was deep reverence for him. After recovering from the shock, Apothecary Lu asked, "Has Zhongshe prepared the required medicinal herbs yet?" "According to what I know, the main medicinal herb of the Grand Intermittence pill, the Grand Intermittence grass, is a rare saint herb. As the saying goes, even the most capable of cook can't cook without ingredients. The medicinal ingredients of grade 7 pills might not be too difficult to find within a conferred empire, but in Hongyuan City, that would be no easy feat. This was especially so for the Grand Intermittence grass. Putting aside how it was rare and impossible to be cultivated, its natural habitat also tended to be regions plagued with poisonous worms. Even Saint Fordan experts would be troubled to procure it. I have already applied for the required medicinal herbs from the headquarters, Zhongshen replied. After obtaining the pill formula of the Grand Intermittence pill, he swiftly looked through the herbs required and noted that the main ingredient, Grand Intermittence grass, was hard to obtain in Hongyuan City. Thus, he applied for it from the headquarters. "You applied for the medicinal herb from the headquarters?" Apothecary Lu and the other apothecaries glanced at one another, astounded. But given the steep price of the Grand Intermittence grass, will the headquarters really be willing to give it to you? Applying and purchasing from the headquarters were two separate matters. Applying was equivalent to asking for a subsidy from the headquarters. Should the headquarters accept the application, they would give the medicinal herb to the applicant without charging anything. On the other hand, purchasing would require the purchaser to pay a certain price in exchange for the medicinal herb. But the Grand Intermittence grass was a rare and valuable saint herb. Even if one were to purchase it from the headquarters, it would cost at least several hundred or even 1,000 high-tier spirit stones. To apply for it, how could the headquarters possibly accept the application? If it was that simple, the Apothecary Guild headquarters would have already closed down from the sheer expenses incurred from apothecaries applying for medicinal herbs. Zhongshen pondered for a moment before replying. "I happened to solve the problems of one of their apothecaries, and the other party promised to help me settle this matter, so I don't think there will be any trouble. The communication wall could only transfer written information, whereas the Jade communication screen allowed one to transmit and view visual information as well." Back then, when Zhongshen had been taking his 6-star apothecary examination, one of the apothecaries on the other end had sent a video of someone forging pills, and Zhongshen had helped the other party analyze and resolve a few problems in his forging method, thus winning the other party's respect. In light of that, the other party had offered to help him apply for the Grand Intermittence grass. But back then, the other party had spoken of it lightly as if it was nothing. Could the other party have been lying to him? Apothecary Lu frowned slightly upon hearing Zhongshen's story, and he said, even for the apothecaries of the headquarters, it would still be difficult for them to apply for medicinal herbs without some connections. Do you know of the name of the apothecary you spoke to? If I recall correctly, I think his name is Wu Huayu. Back then, of the 10 apothecaries projected in the Jade communication wall, he was the one who was the rowdiest. Zhong Xian replied. However, before Zhong Xian could finish his words, the lower jaws of the elders before him abruptly fell to the ground, and they began shaking in fear. What's wrong? Seeing the bizarre state of the elders before him, Zhong Xian frowned. Zhongshe, do you have any idea who Wu Huayu is? Apothecary Lu asked with quivering lips. How could I possibly know? But considering how dim-witted he was and the ton of nonsense that flew out of his mouth, he is probably no one important. Why, do you know each other? Zhong Xian asked. Dim-witted. Cough cough. Apothecary Lu nearly choked. Seeing that the man before him was truly ignorant of it, he could only shake his head with a bitter smile. Wu Huayu is the head of the Qingyuan Conferred Empire Apothecary Guild, a 7-star pinnacle apothecary. The others also hurriedly nodded, as if fearing that Zhong Xian wouldn't believe it. It was one thing for you not to recognize guild leader Wu, but to say that he is dim-witted. That is the number of apothecary of Qingyuan Empire, and yet you speak as if he is nothing at all. More importantly, you even help to solve his problems. Just what kind of monster is standing before me? Guild leader? You are saying that person is the leader of the Apothecary Guild? I see. Zhong Xian was stunned for an instant before he slowly nodded. Since he's the guild leader, there shouldn't be any problem with obtaining the Grand Intermittence Pill. As for the other ingredients, it shouldn't be any trouble obtaining them in Hongyuan City. Here is the list of ingredients that I will need, Zhong Xian said as he passed a piece of paper over. As apothecaries, you have more connections in Hongyuan City than I do. Thus, I will have to trouble you to help me source them. If you see any of these herbs, do help me purchase them, I will repay you later. If I don't have enough money, I will trade grade 6 pills for them. Since Zhong Xian was troubling them to find the medicinal herbs for him, he couldn't possibly have them pay out of their pocket for it too. It just so happened that he had quite a few grade 6 pills remaining in his hands, so he could use them to trade for the medicinal herbs. The medicinal herbs on this list are quite affordable. Apothecary Lu took the paper, browsed through the list of ingredients, and remarked, I think we might be able to gather all of these medicinal herbs through our own private stashes, so there's no need for Zhongshe to pay. You may consider this our way of repaying you for your impartation of knowledge and the pill forging techniques. As old elders of the apothecary school, they had their own stashes of medicinal herbs that they could use whenever they needed. While they might not have extremely valuable saint herbs like the Grand Intermittence grass in their possession, the collections they had accumulated over the years were still rather impressive. Besides, as 6-star pinnacle apothecaries and elders of the Master Teacher Academy, it would be embarrassing if they were to only receive from the other party and not give back to him. It was just a bunch of medicinal herbs, they each had plenty of those in their stash. It was nothing much for them to just give them away. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up, and he clasped his fist and thanked them. I will be thanking you in advance then. Zhongshe, allow me to finish first. Apothecary Lu waved his hands. We are able to gather most of the medicinal herbs required, but there is one which you might have to source for yourself. Which one? Zhong Xian asked. It's the last medicinal herb on the list, the Phoenix Timber Core. Apothecary Lu replied. Phoenix Timber Core? Zhong Xian frowned. You aren't able to find this? The Phoenix Timber Marrow was not a saint herb, spirit herb, or even a medicinal herb. Zhong Xian had thought that it would be the easiest one to find on the list, which was also the reason he had listed it at the very bottom, but who would have thought that the old elders would tell him that they were unable to obtain it? The Phoenix Timber Core is the very foundation of the Phoenix Timber Tree. It has the medical properties of facilitating hemostasis and the recovery of wounds. Compared to the other medicinal herbs, it is indeed not very valuable. However, the problem lies in its rarity. None of us have it in our stash, and it is unlikely that we will be able to find it in the apothecary school and physician school either. Apothecary Lu said. If even the apothecary school and physician school don't have them, Then where am I to look for it? Zhong Xian frowned. The apothecary school and physician school could be said to have the largest collection of medicinal herbs in Hongyuan City. If the phoenix timber core couldn't even be found in those two places, it was highly likely that it would be impossible to find it anywhere else in Hongyuan City. Zhongshu, calm down. While we don't have the means to procure the phoenix timber core, we do know where you can find it. If Zhongshu is able to convince that fellow, you might just be able to obtain it, Apothecary Lu said. Oh. Zhong Xian's eyebrows shot up. Please enlighten me. The main use of the phoenix timber core is not to serve as a medicine but to craft zithers. If my memory fails me not, I believe there is a phoenix timber tree in the demonist tunist school. If you can get to school head Jiang Qingqin, you might just be able to obtain it, Apothecary Lu said. Chapter 823, Attainment of 6 Cranes Demonic Tunist School? Zhong Xian asked doubtfully. That's right. Once the phoenix timber tree matures, one can procure its wood and soak it in a flowing river for 49 days. The resulting wood is an ideal material for crafting the 7-string zither. This instrument has an extremely beautiful sound that reverberates deep within one's soul, making it a treasure which all demonic tunists hope to obtain, Apothecary Lu explained. The current phoenix timber tree in the demonic tunist school was planted personally by school head Jiang Qingqin 500 years ago. Over the many years, it has been nourished by the rich spiritual energy in the academy, thus making it exceptional material. If we can acquire its core to use in forging the grand intermittence pill, it will definitely augment the medical properties of the formed pill. Hearing those words, Zhong Xian nodded. He didn't have much knowledge of the demonic tunist occupation, so he didn't know there was such a use to the phoenix timber core too. All right. I will find a way to purchase the phoenix timber core from the demonic tunist school. Knowing that he could acquire the material inside the Master Teacher Academy, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Purchase? Apothecary School Lu shook his head. School head Jiang has always viewed worldly possessions with nonchalance, so I fear that it won't be that easy. View worldly possessions with nonchalance. Zhong Xian frowned. In any case, we don't have any ties with school head Jiang, and our words also don't have enough weight to sway him, so I'm afraid that we won't be able to help you on this matter. Zhongshu, you will have to convince him yourself. For the time being, I think that you should send him a visiting scroll to indicate that you will be visiting. This will make you seem sincerer, and it might boost your chances of success. Visiting scroll. It is similar to a letter which you send in advance to your visit or write before your visit to indicate your identity so as to give the other party a heads up. It is considered to be polite and respectful. At which point, Apothecary Lu suddenly laughed dryly and said, if Zhongshu were to do what you did to the apothecary school, I fear that it might have the opposite effect. School head Jiang Qingqin was a reticent person, and he usually avoided interacting with others wherever possible. Even though they were the old elders of the apothecary school, they hadn't really had much contact with him. But nevertheless, based on the rumors, they could still fathom a guess on the other party's temperament, and it didn't seem like he was an easy person to get along with. If they were to regard the other party respectfully, they might still stand a chance. But if Zhongshu were to act as he usually did, destroying everything in his path. Don't worry, I am not a reckless person, Zhong Xian reassured them. However, Apothecary Lu and the others fell speechless after hearing those words instead. If it wasn't out of recklessness that you practically crippled the physician school and apothecary school, wouldn't the Master Teacher Academy collapse if you were to get reckless? Seeing that there was still some time before the agreed time with Luo Ruoxin, Zhong Xian instructed, Sun Qiong, make some preparations. We will be heading to the demonic tunist school now. Yes. Sun Qiong hurriedly rushed off to prepare. Soon, after confirming the direction, the master and butler headed for the demonic tunist school. In the demonic tunist school, beneath a lush phoenix timber tree, an elder was stroking his zither calmly. The melodious sound of the zither drifted lightly in the air, and 6 divine cranes began dancing upon hearing the music. They flew around the courtyard joyously, calling out in excitement. A long time later, the zither music finally came to an end. The elder shook his head and sighed. I'm still a bit off. Another elder not too far away stroked his beard and said, "School head, that's because your expectations are too high. Choir of 6 cranes, that is already a level that countless dream of. In order to reach 7 cranes, that requires one to possess skills on par with a 7-star demonic tunis." The old man who had been playing just a moment ago was school head Jiang Qingqin, and the other person with him was vice school head Ning Hai. "These days, I can feel that a breakthrough is imminent, but I just can't find the impetus to do so." Jiang Qingqin shook his head. Not too far away, the flying cranes landed back on the ground, returning back to their flock of around a dozen cranes. Demonic tunist, just like the other occupations, could be divided into differing levels of capability. In this case, the more cranes that one was able to allure into dancing merrily in the sky, the greater one's capability as a demonic tunist was. Jiang Qingqin's feat of inducing 6 cranes to dance harmoniously to his zither could already be considered an incredible achievement. The music of the zither originates from the heart. There's no point getting anxious over it. Perhaps, if you could empty your mind, you might achieve a breakthrough instead. Vice school head Ning chuckled. "That's true, but with so many things going on the academy recently, it's not easy for me to empty my mind." Jiang Qingqin sighed. He would have also loved to stay out of worldly affairs and achieve a transcendent state of mind, but as the head of the demonic tunis school, he had many affairs that he had to tend to each day. It was easier said than done. Furthermore, many troubles seemed to have cropped up within the Master Teacher Academy one after another in recent days. Bearing heavy responsibilities on his shoulders, he couldn't just turn his head away at such a time. Indeed. Vice school head Ning sighed as he placed his fingers on the zither before him. "Being a school head sure is tough. Even if you offered to hand it over to me for free, I still wouldn't take it. What I want is to roam the world, living joyously and carefree with a zither in hand, unburdened by worldly affairs." "You." Seeing his old friend's state, Jiang Qingqin chuckled and shook his head. In truth, Vice School Head Ning was nowhere beneath him in terms of his capability, and if he wished to, he was more than qualified to become the school head. However, it was just that he was unwilling to take on the responsibility. At that moment, a student suddenly rushed into the courtyard. "Teacher, Zhong Xian seeks an audience." As the student spoke, he passed a visiting scroll over. "Zhong Xian?" Jiang Qingqin was taken aback for an instant before the corners of his mouth twitched. "What is he doing here? I don't think I have any conflict with him. What's wrong? Is there something special about that Zhong Xian?" Seeing Jiang Qingqin's state, Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but be puzzled. Even though Ning Hai was the vice head of the demonic tunis school, it was more or less only in name. He rarely interfered in the affairs of the school, spending his days playing his zither, immersed in music. Thus, he was unaware of the various affairs surrounding Zhong Xian. Special is an understatement. He is like the god of destruction. Wherever he goes, unrest follows. Jiang Qingqin swiftly brought his old friend up to speed on the matter. "To think that there would be such a formidable genius in our Master Teacher Academy," Vice School Head Ning exclaimed in astonishment. He had heard of master teachers who possessed a particular talent for a single occupation or two, but never had he seen a 20-year-old freshman overpowering multiple schools in the academy single-handedly. This was unimaginable. "But our demonic tunis school has no grudge with him. What is he doing here?" Jiang Qingqin's questioned with an awful complexion. He was usually extremely easygoing, rarely allowing anything to get to him. But Lu Feng had described the other party as if he was a monster with 6 arms, so Jiang Qingqin couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive at the other party's arrival. To visit the demonic tunis school for no apparent reason, it couldn't be that he intended to tear down the demonic tunis school? "Based on what you said, we can't discount that possibility." Vice School Head Ning frowned as well. "Since that's the case, tell him that I am currently in seclusion, so I can't meet him," Jiang Qingqin instructed the student. "That won't work. If that fellow resorts to forceful measures after being turned down by you, the demonic tunis school might just end up like the other schools." Vice School Head Ning hurriedly interjected. "What should we do then?" Jiang Qingqin frowned. Honestly speaking, that Zhong Xian was truly a star of calamity. Misfortune fell on whoever was around him. If he had a choice, he would definitely stay as far out of that fellow's path as he could. Why don't we invite him in for the time being? Since he has delivered his visiting scroll instead of barging in, I think that there are still grounds for negotiation, Vice School Head Ning said. Furthermore, if he is as formidable as you have said, and he has a deep understanding of demonic tunes as well, we could have him offer some pointers to our students, and perhaps, that might lead to a significant rise in the strength of our demonic tunist school. Hearing those words, Jiang Qingqin's eyes lit up as well. Indeed. This encounter can be considered an opportunity for our demonic tunist school too. Thus, Jiang Qingqin turned to the student and instructed, "All right, invite him in." Even though Zhong Xian had a fearsome record of destruction behind him, considering the nature of the demonic tunist examination, it was unlikely that he could do anything to the school. Besides, if the other party possessed true capability, he could even apply for the 6-star demonic tunist emblem for the other party directly. Yes. The student nodded before leaving quickly. Not too long later, he returned with Zhong Xian and a plump man. Zhong Xian stepped forward and clasped his fist. Zhong Xian pays respect to School Head Jiang and Vice School Head Ning. On the way here, he had already asked the student about the identities of the duo standing beneath the phoenix timber tree. "There's no need to stand on ceremony with us, Zhongshe. I have heard much about your affairs. May I ask the reason behind your visit? Our small demonic tunist school is unable to take any setbacks, so I have to ask of you to have mercy on us," Jiang Qingqin said. School Head Jiang, what are you talking about? Not expecting the other party to actually take precautions against him right from the start, Zhong Xian was stunned for a moment. He quickly clasped his fist and replied, "Actually, the reason I am here today is because I have something to request of you." "Oh." Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai exchanged doubtful glances, and after a brief moment of silence, Jiang Qingqin turned to Zhong Xian and said grimly, "As long as you don't destroy the demonic tunist school, challenge the trials here, and have my students join your Shenxian faction, I will definitely do whatever I can for you." Cough cough. Zhong Xian choked on his saliva. What the heck is this? It was not like I intended to cause all that damage. All I did was challenge those trials fair and square, and yet, everyone treats me as if I am bent on destroying everything I lay my eyes on. I am not such a person. But as frustrated as Zhong Xian was, he didn't forget the aim of his visit. "The reason I am here is to ask School Head Jiang to spare me some Phoenix Timber Core." "Phoenix Timber Core? Impossible. I can't give you that." Hearing those words, School Head Jiang immediately waved his hands and rejected him decisively. When he'd seen how amicable the other party's attitude was, he had thought that the other party might not be as bad as the rumors had made him out to be. But who knew that the other party would ask for his Phoenix Timber Core? There was no one in the Master Teacher Academy who didn't know that the Phoenix Timber Tree was his most prized possession. To actually ask me to give it to you, that's as good as taking my life. Why don't you just kill me instead? I am willing to pay a premium price on it, Zhong Xian offered without any hesitation, knowing the rarity of the Phoenix Timber Core. "I won't sell it to you even if you are willing to pay a premium on it." School Head Jiang shook his head. "All right then." Seeing how determined the other party was, Zhong Xian could only sigh helplessly. "Then, may I know where the library of the demonic tunist school is and where I can take the demonic tunist examination? I would like to take the demonic tunist examination while I am here." "You want to take the demonic tunist examination?" Recalling the huge calamity that had resulted from the young man before him taking the examinations of the other occupations, School Head Jiang's lips twitched, and he hurriedly waved his hands. "No way. No way. Is School Head Jiang prohibiting me from taking the demonic tunist examination?" Zhong Xian asked doubtfully. "That's not it." Jiang Qingqin's complexion looks extremely awful, but he had no idea how he could speak about the matter. In truth, he had no right to stop the other party if the other party wanted to take the examination. After all, the students had their own freedom to take the examinations as they liked. It was utterly ridiculous for him to prevent a genius from taking the demonic tunist examination just because of his fear. If so, He would be unqualified to be a master teacher as well. Seeing that Jiang Qingqin was in a dilemma, Ning Hai discreetly sent a telepathic message to him. School head, aren't you trying to achieve a breakthrough beyond the attainment of 6 cranes? Considering the incredible reputation of that fellow, why don't you have him offer you some pointers on your demonic tunes? If he is able to help you reach attainment of 7 cranes, there is no harm giving him some phoenix timber core. But if he fails, you will have a reason to turn him down and ask him to leave. This. Hearing those words, Jiang Qingqin's eyes suddenly lit up in enlightenment. Indeed. Since the other party was able to make all of the teachers and students of the apothecary school willingly acknowledge him as his teacher, and even Wei Ranshua was completely awed by his teaching, perhaps he might be able to do the same in demonic tunes as well. Chapter 824. Fly, Divine Cranes. As long as you can do something for me, it's not impossible for me to give you some phoenix timber core. With such thoughts in mind, Jiang Qingqin regained his confidence. Oh! Curious to know why the other party had suddenly changed his mind, Zhongxian turned to look at him. Currently, my zither playing can only draw in 6 cranes. If you can help me reach the attainment of 7 cranes within the next 2 hours, I can give the phoenix timber core to you for free. Jiang Qingqin revealed his motive. 6 cranes. Attainment of 7 cranes? What are those? Zhongxian was bewildered by those foreign terms. He had never come into contact with any demonic tunist books before, and the other party used professional jargon specific to the occupation, so he couldn't understand it at all. You don't know? As the other party had said that he would challenge the demonic tunist exam, school head Jiang had assumed that the other party possessed capability as a demonic tunist on par with him. Yet, to hear him ask such basic questions at this moment, Jiang Qingqin felt his vision turning dark, and he nearly spurted blood. The hell? These are terms one learns as an apprentice, and yet you don't know them. Could it be that you don't know a single thing about demonic tunists? An amateur like you dared to arrogantly declare that you would take the demonic tunist examination? Yuan Zhongxian nodded. All right then. Of all demonic tunes, those involving zithers tend to possess the greatest offensive power, so most demonic tunists choose to immerse themselves in the study of the zither. It also became the basis to judge one's level of attainment as a demonic tunist. The deeper one's understanding of the zither, the more aligned one's zither playing will be with nature, drawing in more divine cranes to dance to one's melody. Under normal circumstances, a 1-star demonic tunist will be able to draw in 1 crane, and a 2-star will be able to draw in 2 cranes, so on and so forth. This is also the standard for determining a demonic tunist's capability. Suppressing his frustration, Jiang Qingqin explained the basic knowledge, which even an apprentice would know. I am currently a 6-star pinnacle demonic tunist, and I am only capable of charming 6 divine cranes to dance at once. 7 is still beyond my reach. If you can allow my zither playing to charm 7 divine cranes to dance simultaneously, I will give my phoenix timber core to you. 7 divine cranes dancing simultaneously? Zhongxian frowned. That's right. Jiang Qingqin nodded. What I am lacking now is just an impetus for a breakthrough. If you can help me accomplish it, I will agree to your request. Otherwise, I will have to ask of you to leave and never come back. This. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before turning his gaze to Jiang Qingqin. In other words, as long as 7 divine cranes dance simultaneously while you are playing, you will accede to my request. Can I interpret it as so? That's right. Jiang Qingqin nodded. That's simple. I won't even need 2 hours. Just 5 minutes will do. Zhongxian smiled confidently. He was still thinking what kind of arduous mission he would be tasked with, but to think that this would be it. Count on me, I will solve it for you within moment. The 2 elders were stunned. Just 5 minutes will do. Are you for real? Jiang Qingqin had cultivated diligently for 500 years only to yet to make the breakthrough to attainment of 7 cranes, and yet, within 5 minutes, you are going to make him make breakthrough? I thought you didn't even know about the 6 cranes and 7 cranes. Are you sure you possess the ability to do so? If you succeed, putting aside the phoenix timber core, I will even allow you to take the entire phoenix timber tree away with you. Of course. Zhongxian reassured with a nod. That's good to hear. So, where did I go wrong? Why am I still unable to make a breakthrough after so many years? Jiang Qingqin was a little hesitant, but as he recalled the unbelievable records the young man before him had achieved, he decided to put his trust in the other party. Even Vice School head Ning couldn't help but be curious about what Zhongxian was going to do. To make such big claims, he must have some unbelievable means up his sleeves. Was this the prowess of a master teacher who had comprehended the eye of insight? Play the zither, Zhongxian instructed. All right. Knowing that he had to first display his capability before the other party could offer him any pointers, Jiang Qingqin's fingers slid across the zither, and a note resonated in the air. It was like a melody had descended from the heavens, resounding in the courtyard. The melody mesmerized the listeners in an instant. It was a tune permeated with grandness, as if one had ascended to godhood and was laughing heartily at the world beneath his feet. Demonic tunist was an occupation specializing in soul attacks. Upon reaching a high level of attainment, one could create an entire army or a destructive tempest with just a slight flick on the zither, making it difficult for even Saint Realm experts to withstand their might. Legend has it that demonic tunists were once known as divine tunists. But 20,000 years ago, a 9-star divine tunist found himself deeply encircled by his enemies. With his zither in hand, he drew out demons with his playing to slaughter the million-strong army around him. That battle had forged the reputation of demonic tunist in the master-teacher continent. It was then that everyone learned that the seemingly unimpressive occupation could wield such fearsome power as well, and it was in deference to them that the world had conferred on them the word demon. Impressive. Zhongxian had to drive his heaven's path Shenqi before the pressure on his body finally disappeared. He couldn't help but be astonished. If he hadn't been prepared, he might have been left in a trance from the zither music. It seemed that even the occupations of the lower 9 paths held immense potential in them. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly have been passed down over several dozen millennia without going into decline. Jiang Qingqin frowned. He had been intending to teach the young man a lesson, so he had intentionally added an offensive edge to his playing. He had thought that the other party would have been mesmerized by his playing, especially given the other party's low cultivation, but who knew that in a blink of an eye, the other party's eyes would immediately become clear? He couldn't help but be impressed. It was no wonder the other party could induce such widespread fear around the academy, leaving even school head Lu in a frenzy. As young as the other party might be, he did seem to possess unparalleled talent and capability. Hoo. Impressed, Jiang Qingqin decided to stop with his little tricks, and the zither music abruptly became gentle. Upon hearing the music, some of the divine cranes suddenly began to call excitedly, and they rose into the sky to dance. 1 crane, 2 cranes, 3 cranes. Not long later, 6 cranes were dancing along to the zither music. Seeing that the zither music could indeed charm the divine cranes into dancing, Zhongxian nodded in awe. As a soul oracle, Zhongxian had a deep understanding of soul. This granted him the ability to induce effects reminiscent of demonic tunes with his words, such as inducing dizziness in another's soul. However, it was still beyond him to charm so many divine cranes into dancing along to a melody. Zhongshu, as you can see, I have achieved the attainment of 6 cranes. However, I am still unable to charm the 7th crane. How should I play in order to make the breakthrough? Jiang Qingqin's voice echoed resoundingly amid the zither melody. Despite his advanced age, his voice had a melodious edge to it, reminiscent of singing. It felt extreme comfortable, and it complemented beautifully with the zither melody. Leave it to me. Hearing the other party's words, Zhongxian chuckled. He stepped forward, heading to where the divine cranes were loitering around. Even after 6 of the cranes had left, there were still 10 left in the group. Jiang Qingqin had been taking care of these cranes since they were young, so they were extremely obedient to him. At this moment, they were standing silently on the spot, seemingly enjoying the music. Let's begin. When Zhongxian was around 10 meters away from a crane, he stretched his back and took in a deep breath. Heaven's Path movement art. Heaven's Path fist art. With a forceful step, his figure abruptly turned into an afterimage. Peng 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 peng. 10 consecutive punches struck the 10 remaining cranes standing peacefully on the spot. In an instant, they were sent flying, and their bodies crashed into the wall of the backyard, leaving a huge dent behind them. Jiang Qingqin staggered. He was still wondering what pointers Zhongsha was going to offer him when the latter abruptly laid his hands on his crane, smashing them into the wall. In that instant, he nearly fainted from fury. Ding! In that moment of panic, Jiang Qingqin abruptly exerted too much force, and a string on the zither snapped, created an abrupt disharmonious note. Glaring at Zhongxian with eyes that could kill, he roared, "Zhongsha, what are you doing?" It was no wonder he was angry. He had taken care of those cranes from young, and he had long developed a sense of fondness for them. Even though he could tell that the other party had held back his punches, leaving a breath in his cranes, still, to pummel his cranes without any hesitation, unforgivable. "School head Jiang, please calm down. Continue playing your melody. I will have 7 cranes dancing before you very soon," Zhongxian instructed. Very soon? Jiang Qingqin was slightly hesitant. "You are supposed to offer me pointers so that I can make a breakthrough in my demonic tune arts, but instead of focusing your attention on me, you turn to my cranes instead. Can I really make a breakthrough like this? Trust me, you will see soon enough." Zhongxian nodded in reassurance. "Humph. That had better be the case. Otherwise, you'd better have an explanation for harming my cranes." With a livid expression, Jiang Qingqin fixed the snapped string with his zhenqi and began playing once again. The fellow before him had created simply far too many miracles, and he had been stuck at the attainment of 6 cranes for far too long. His eagerness to achieve a breakthrough and the other party's confidence in his words convinced him to give it another try. Trying Ting Tang Ting, a melody that created the vivid imagery of a flowing river deep in the mountains drifted in the air, creating a soothing atmosphere. Upon hearing the music, the 6 divine cranes which had been spared from the previous injury began dancing in the air once again. Seeing how school head Jiang could quickly keep his emotions in check and play an impeccable tune rich with emotions, Zhongxian couldn't help but nod in commendation. Chuckling softly, he waved his hands and said, "Fly freely, divine cranes." Along with his words, one of the cranes which he had pummeled just a moment ago struggled to its feet, and with a loud call, it leaped into the sky to join the dancing 6. "You succeeded?" Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Wasn't Zhongxian going to offer some pointers to his old friend to help him achieve a breakthrough? Yet, with a fly freely, divine cranes, his old friend reached the attainment of 7 cranes just like that. But judging from the melody, it didn't seem like there was any improvement or change in his old friend's playing whatsoever. Before Vice School Head Ning could make sense of what was happening, yet another crane struggled to its feet. After shaking its head to recover from its dizziness, it abruptly flapped its wings, and with a loud call, it joined the dancing group. 8 cranes. Vice School Head Ning's lips twitched. Wasn't his old friend still struggling to charm 7 cranes a moment ago? How did it suddenly turn into 8 cranes? 8 cranes. Did this mean that his old friend was on par with an 8-star demonic tunist? But his old friend's music hadn't changed whatsoever, and Zhongsha hadn't offered any guidance either. How did the level of his playing abruptly rise like that? Just as Vice School Head Ning was still perplexed by the sight before him, the rest of the cranes, which had been struck into the wall, struggled to their feet, and shaking their heads, they flapped their wings and soared into the sky as well. 9 cranes, 10 cranes, 11 cranes. Vice School Head Ning was frenzied by the sight before him. For a moment, he was so agitated that he could hardly catch his breath. The highest level a demonic tunist could achieve was the attainment of 9 cranes, and yet, at this very moment, there were 11 cranes flying in the air. Not only so, the remaining cranes were showing signs of joining the dance as well. Just what was going on? Could Zhongsha really possess such mystical abilities? Even without giving any pointers, he could induce substantial improvement in another with just a momentary glance. Astonished, Vice School Head Ning hurriedly turned his attention back to his old friend's playing in an attempt to feel if it had reached a profound level when one of the zither strings suddenly snapped. Seemingly having realized something, his old friend's face turned as dark as the stormy clouds, and his hands had trembled to a stop as well. The usually composed Jiang Qingqin could no longer hold back his rage anymore, and a furious bellow reminiscent of the howling of a wolf echoed resoundingly in the courtyard. Zhong Xian. Screw you. Chapter 8:25 Demonic Tunist Examination 2-in-1 What's wrong? Seeing his old friend flying into such a rage, Vice School Head Ning was stunned. It had been 500 years since he met Jiang Qingqin, and not once had he seen the latter losing his composure before. In fact, there was even one time when a direct disciple of his betrayed Jiang Qingqin, and Jiang Qingqin evicted him from his lineage without the slightest hint of anger on his face. Yet, at this instant, he was bellowing furiously at a freshman without any regard for his bearings. Just what was going on? Hua la. As soon as the melody came to a halt, the cranes in the sky descended back to the ground, and they called out delightfully, as if they had managed to achieve something incredible. School head, so did you achieve a breakthrough or not? Vice School Head Ning asked curiously. Demonic Tunist was very unlike most other occupations, in the sense that its improvement was not strictly tied to one's cultivation or skills, but the deeper intent infused into the playing. Considering that Jiang Qingqin was able to charm so many divine cranes into dancing to his melody, it should mean that the level of his playing had risen significantly. Yet, for some reason, the intent he could feel from it didn't seem to have reached a higher level, so he couldn't help but feel a little doubtful. The hell with breakthroughs. School Head Jiang stood up furiously as he glared at the young man in the distance, seemingly tempted to rush forward and tear the latter to shreds. Vice School Head Ning was unable to comprehend what was going on. You didn't achieve a breakthrough? Then why would the cranes? It was an unchanging rule that the number of cranes one could charm into dancing would correspond to one's level of capability. Yet, just a moment ago, he had seen the unbelievable sight of 16 cranes dancing harmoniously to a melody. Why, you ask? That's because he tamed my cranes. Jiang Qingqin looked as if he was going to explode. When he'd seen the other party's confident declaration, he had thought that the other party might just have some mystical means to help him achieve a breakthrough. Yet, the other party had used some unknown method to tame 10 of his cranes instead. Naturally, a tamed spirit beast would obey the orders of its master, so naturally, they flew at the other party's command. So, that's what happened. Hearing the story, Vice School Head Ning also nearly fainted. What we meant by 7 cranes dancing is a breakthrough in one's capability as a demonic tunist. What use is it for you to tame those cranes and make them dance at your command? If taming cranes and making them dance can represent one's capability as a demonic tunist, I would have found a few hundred cranes to do so long ago. Not expecting Jiang Qingqin to be furious even after he had done what the other party had asked him to, Zhong Xian frowned. School Head Jiang, you said it yourself that you will give me the Phoenix Timber Core as long as I can make 7 divine cranes dance simultaneously to your melody. Now 16 of them have done so. It can't be that you are intending to renege on your promise, can it? Renege on my promise? Renege your head. Jiang Qingqin clenched his jaws so tightly together that it felt that his teeth might chip at any moment, and in that moment, he was on the verge of going berserk. Never ever have I seen someone as shameless as you. You are clearly just playing on my words. How can you still speak so brazenly? What I mean is for you to help me achieve a breakthrough, and yet, you ended up taming my cranes instead. You hadn't done what I asked you to, and you still dare to ask me for the Phoenix Timber Core? Not expecting that an esteemed master teacher would suddenly insult him like that, Zhong Xian harumphed furiously. Vice School Head Ning, please help us judge this matter. Didn't School Head Jiang say that as long as 7 cranes flew simultaneously to his melody, he would give the Phoenix Timber Crane to me? Does being the school head give one the right to take advantage of another like that? This. Vice School Head Ning's lips twitched uncontrollably. Previously, his old friend had said these exact words, if you can allow my zither playing to charm 7 divine cranes to dance simultaneously, I will give my Phoenix Timber Core to you. Even though the implied meaning was to offer pointers such as to raise his old friend's level of playing, if one were to just look at the meaning of the words itself. Zhong Xian's interpretation wasn't wrong either. 16 cranes had danced in the air, so technically speaking, the other party had already fulfilled what had been asked of him. After a moment of hesitation, Vice School Head spoke slowly. Zhongshe, what School Head Jiang means by 7 cranes is the level of his playing. This is jargon commonly used by demonic tunists. While you did manage to make 7 cranes dance simultaneously to his tune, the way you did was via the means of a beast tamer. Isn't that twisting the meaning of his request? You said that we are taking advantage of you, but you are the one who is bullying us. What Jiang Qingqin meant was the level of his playing, but you used the means of a beast tamer to resolve the problem instead. It doesn't work like that. It was only then that Zhongxian finally realized what was going on. He had really thought that it would suffice as long as he could make the cranes dance to the other party's melody, and he had even asked once again to double-check it. But from the looks of it now, the matter wasn't as simple as he had thought. It was a communication error. Considering how valuable the Phoenix Timber core was, he knew that it couldn't possibly be so easy. After a moment of hesitation, Zhongxian said, "So, what you mean is for me to raise School Head Jiang's level of playing? You should have said so earlier. Since that's the case, may I know where the demonic Tunis School's library is? I would like to take a look in there." He could easily make 1,000 divine cranes dance in the air, but to raise the capability of a 6-star demonic tunist, his knowledge was still far too lacking at the moment. He would have to first read some books in order to gain some understanding of the demonic tunist occupation first. Our library? Hearing Zhongxian ask about this matter again, Vice School Head Ning frowned in doubt. Yes. I have noticed a few things about School Head Jiang's current state, but there are still a few aspects that I am still unable to make sense of. I wish to browse through some books to verify certain details first before coming to a conclusion, Zhongxian replied. The Library of Heaven's Path allowed him to see through the flaws of another, but it didn't provide him with the solution. Without any understanding of demonic tunists, there was no way he could come up with a suitable solution to School Head Jiang's problem. Only after browsing through some books and reaching the same level as the other party or even higher would he be able to resolve the flaws that the other party had. However, he could not speak of this matter. Otherwise, he would have been kicked out under the suspicions of being a lunatic, so he could only make up a reason on the spot. This. Vice School Head Ning shot a glance at Jiang Qingqin, who was still furious about the happenings a moment ago. Vice School Head Ning sent the school head a telepathic message. Should we let him into our library? If my problem could be resolved just by browsing through books, do you think I would have been stuck at this bottleneck for over 500 years? Jiang Qingqin scoffed in skepticism. I will reject him then. Vice School Head Ning replied. Wait a moment. It isn't much of a problem to allow him into our library. How about we do this? Tell him that we will allow him to enter, but if he is still unable to induce a rise in the level of my playing, he can forget about obtaining the Phoenix Timber core from me, Jiang Qingqin said. After a moment of hesitation, he added, also, he is only allowed to browse through the books. He isn't to cause any trouble or destruction in the demonic tunist school. His original intention was to turn Zhongxian down, but fearing that he might start demanding to take their examination or challenge their trial the next moment, he swiftly changed his mind and decided to accede to the latter's request instead. Since the purpose of a library was for one to enhance their knowledge, it wasn't a big deal to allow Zhongxian in to browse through their books. But of course, that was assuming that the other party didn't cause any trouble. All right. Vice School Head Ning nodded before turning to Zhongxian to relay those words. Hearing that he was allowed entry into the library, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble. The library is around the back, I'll take you over there, Vice School Head Ning said as he led the way forward. Since it would take some time for him to browse through the books, Zhongxian had Sun Qiong return to the manor first before following closely behind Vice School Head Ning. The demonic tunist school's library was significantly smaller than the apothecary schools and physician schools. With his authority as a vice school head, Ning Hai was able to open the library to Zhongxian without requiring a student token or academic credits on the other party's part. Thank you, Vice School Head Ning. Entering the library, Zhongxian saw innumerable books stacked on shelves, and his eyes lit up. All right, I'll leave you be. If you have any requests, feel free to have any student relay it to me. Ning Hai said before bidding Zhong Xian farewell. Zhong Xian responded with a nod before turning his eyes back onto the huge collection of books before him. Possessing the ability to store books into the Library of Heaven's Path with just a glance, he didn't need to go through the trouble of flipping through the books like before. Focusing his gaze, the books on the shelves began appearing in the Library of Heaven's Path at an incredible speed. Just like the library in the Terpsichore school, there were hardly any students in here. However, this played just to Zhong Xian's liking. It would be a bother if others were to disturb him while he was taking in the books. 1 book, 2 books, 100 books, 200 books, 1,000 books, 2,000 books. In a few hours, Zhong Xian managed to successfully take in the several million books stored in the library. Compiling them, he formed the 1-star to 6-star Heaven's Path demonic tune arts. I should start reading them now. As there was no one around, Zhong Xian simply found a more spacious area and sat there. Immersing his consciousness into the Library of Heaven's Path, he began studying from the 1-star Heaven's Path demonic tune art. 6 hours later, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At that very moment, his understanding of demonic tunes had already reached 6-star, putting him on par or even above that of school head Jiang Qingqin. Since I have attained the capability of a 6-star demonic tunist, I should make use of this chance to take the demonic tunist examination and obtain the 6-star emblem for myself. In order to make the advancement to a 6-star master teacher, he had to have 6-star emblems in 6 supporting occupations. At that moment, he had the 6-star emblems for blacksmith, physician, apothecary, and terpsichore, and he lacked another 2. Since he was already in the demonic tunist school, and he had some time to spare, it would be best for him to get this over with. Thus, he left the library, and after asking around, he headed for the demonic tunist aula, where the demonic tunist examination was held. Unlike the Tower of Physicians, the demonic tunist aula was a spherical building with an opening at the top, reminiscent of an observatory in his previous life. Those who intended to take the demonic tunist examination would sit at the very front row and play their instrument. The music would be amplified by the walls before echoing up into the heavens. Upon hearing the melody, the cranes residing in the school would fly over and dance merrily to the tune. After which, the examinee's level of playing would be assessed by the number of cranes drawn in. Just outside of the demonic tunist aula stood a young man who was currently snoozing on a table. He was probably the student worker in charge of facilitating the examinations in the demonic tunist aula. Walking up to the table, Zhong Xian clasped his fist and said, "Senior, I would like to take the demonic tunist examination." "You want to take the demonic tunist examination?" The young man rubbed his eyes and took a good look at Zhong Xian before asking, "What rank?" "I have never taken the examination before, so I intend to start from the 1-star examination," Zhong Xian replied. "Start from the 1-star examination? That's fine. Here are the music scores used for the 1-star examination. You have to choose a piece from here and play it for the examination. As long as you draw in a single crane with your playing, the demonic tunist aula will automatically award you a pass. You may start whenever you are ready," the young man said as he passed a file of music scores over. Only certain scores were allowed in the demonic tunist examinations. One had to display the capability of a 1-star demonic tunist through those specific scores in order to pass the 1-star examination. All right. After reading through the books in the library, Zhong Xian had also gained a rough understanding of the typical rules concerning the demonic tunist examinations, so he didn't have much trouble with that. However, there was another problem that he faced. I don't have a zither with me, so may I borrow one?" Zhong Xian asked awkwardly. The young man's eyes widened in disbelief. "You don't have a zither? Why are you here if you don't even have a zither with you?" A zither to a demonic tunist is like a sword to a swordsman or a brush to a painter. Yet, you wish to take the examination without even having one in your possession. You must be pulling my leg. To want to take the demonic tunist without a zither at hand, you really are one of kind. I remember that if an examinee doesn't possess a suitable zither, he can borrow one from the demonic tunist school. Zhong Xian said. With the books he had read, he had also gained a good grasp regarding the rules concerning the demonic tunist school as well. Based on what he knew, The demonic Tunis school lent zithers to examinees who needed them, and it wasn't against the rules to do so. It's true that you can borrow a zither from our school, but putting aside the fact that those zithers are of subpar quality, they are also extremely old and worn. It's possible that the strings may snap just by exerting the slightest force on them, so your results will not be ideal if you use them. Are you certain about this? The young man asked doubtfully. The zithers of the demonic Tunis school were crafted to only have the bare basics required. Furthermore, they hadn't been used for many years, so they had already gotten rusty. It was questionable whether any of them could play a proper tune or not, and to use one in an examination, the chances of clearing the examination would be unimaginably low. This was precisely the reason very few people were willing to use it. I am certain. Zhong Xian nodded. It would be rather troublesome for him to head out now to purchase a zither, and it was unlikely that he would use it often. Thus, to spare himself the trouble, he decided to simply use the school's zithers. All right then. Seeing that Zhong Xian had decided on the matter, the young man shook his head and walked into a room behind his table. Not too long later, he returned with an extremely worn-out zither and a few zither strings. Use it carefully. These are spare strings for you to replace with should any snap in the midst of your playing. You have 2 hours. If you fail to draw a single crane within the time limit, it will mean that you have failed the examination, the young man said. In truth, he didn't have much confidence in the fellow standing before him. How could there be a demonic tunist who didn't even possess a zither of his own? The fact that he didn't possess a zither likely meant that he lacked practice and that his skills were subpar. Occasionally, he would encounter such arrogant students who had an absurdly optimistic view of their own skills. Noted. Taking the zither, Zhong Xian paid the fee required for the examination before heading into the demonic tunist aula. The results for the demonic tunist examination were primarily determined by the divine cranes, so there was no need for complicated formations which consumed a great deal of energy to be inscribed onto the demonic tunist aula. On top of that, there were rarely any examinees around as well. In order to encourage more students to take the examination, the demonic Tunis school decided to waive the payment of the academic credits and charge only a small amount of spirit stones for the examination. Walking to the center of the demonic Tunist aula via a long passageway, Zhong Xian found himself surrounded by thick walls inscribed with unique patterns. Zither melodies seemed to resonate with those patterns, amplifying the sound many times over. However, and fortunately as well, this sound could only be heard by the divine cranes. There was not a single person in sight within the demonic Tunist aula. Zhong Xian walked straight up to the round stage at the very center and placed the old zither on the small wooden table there. After which, he placed his finger on the music scores and imprinted them into his mind. It's quite a simple tune. Zhong Xian chuckled softly to himself. Having mastered the 6-star Heaven's Path demonic tune art, his level of playing was currently, at the bare minimum, on par with school head Jiang. To him, playing the score prepared for the 1-star examination was nothing more than a walk in the park. I should give the zither a try first. Placing his finger on the zither, Zhong Xian plucked a string lightly, and a crisp sound reminiscent of a flowing river striking against a boulder sounded. Even though the sound produced by the zither was lacking in richness, it was at least still usable. All right, time to begin. Calming his mind, Zhong Xian began moving his fingers, and a beautiful melody began permeating the room. In the demonic Tunist school head office. He didn't cause any trouble, right? Seeing Vice School Head Ning walk into the office, Jiang Qingqin couldn't help but ask that, his tone tinged with unease. Vice School Head Ning shook his head. He didn't. Truthfully, he had also been a little worried previously. This was also the reason he had stood outside the library for several hours to ensure that nothing wrong was going to happen, before he eventually convinced himself that it was safe to leave. Jiang Qingqin heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. However, at this point, Vice School Head suddenly spoke up hesitantly with a deep frown. What's wrong? Jiang Qingqin hurriedly asked. Honestly, the rumors regarding that fellow were simply far too frightening. He couldn't help but pay careful heed to every single action the other party did. This morning, he left the library and headed to the demonic Tunist aula. If I'm not mistaken, I think he intends to take the demonic tunist examination, Vice School Head Ning said. Jiang Qingqian's eyelids twitched as he asked, doesn't he know nothing about demonic tune arts? Why is he taking the examination? I'm not too sure either. I was fearful that he would wreak havoc, so I secretly followed behind him and watched the situation from the outside. However, I saw the 15 cranes stationed for the examination flying into the demonic tunist aula, and they didn't leave while I was there. With a tight frown, Vice School Head Ning recounted what he had seen. In order to ensure that the examination could be held at any time, the demonic tunist aula had also reared 15 cranes of their own. They flew into the demonic tunist aula? But even if that fellow is taking the 6-star demonic tunist examination, 6 should be enough. For 15 of them to fly in, just what is he up to? Jiang Qingqian was perplexed. 15 cranes flew over when only 6 were needed. Something was definitely amiss. I'm also a little bewildered by this matter, that's why I came here to discuss it with you. Vice School Head Ning nodded. Discuss? This isn't the time for discussions. We have to rush over to take a look. Otherwise, who knows if that fellow will kill all of our cranes and roast them for his breakfast. Recalling the various bizarre feats that young man had accomplished, Jiang Qingqian's face darkened. He immediately stood up to rush out of his office, but at that moment, the office doors opened, and a head peeped in around the side. That. School Head Jiang, I wish to take the demonic tunist examination, but there aren't enough cranes around. Can you lend some to me? Zhong Xian asked awkwardly. Jiang Qingqian frowned deeply upon hearing those words. How many do you intend to borrow? Beside him, Vice School Head Ning also widened his eyes in disbelief. There aren't enough cranes around. You have 15 cranes over there. Never has the demonic tunist aula received a complaint about having insufficient cranes. Why are you the only exception? Just what in the world did you do to our cranes? At that instant, School Head Jiang and Vice School Head Ning felt extremely choked up within. Chapter 826. 5-star demonic tunist returning back to the time when Zhong Xian first began playing in the demonic tunist aula. As the melody was amplified by the walls, it gradually crescendoed before spilling out from the top. Chio. Not too long later, with a crisp call, a crane flew over. Under the influence of the beautiful melody, it began to dance delightfully. Great, one came. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. Since a crane had come over, it meant he had cleared his 1-star demonic tunist examination. Let me see if I can lure 2 over. Without changing the score, Zhong Xian adjusted his state of mind and executed the Heaven's Path demonic tunist art 2 Dan. In an instant, the zither melody abruptly became sharp and desolate. Under normal circumstances, taking the examination of the next rank would require a change in the music score, but Zhong Xian was too lazy to head out to take it from the young man. In any case, this melody sounded rather pleasant, so he decided to go as far as he could for the moment. Switching from the Heaven's Path demonic tunist art 1 Dan to 2 Dan, the intent behind Zhong Xian's playing suddenly grew much richer, and the sound he produced seemed to have become far more vibrant and resounding as well. Chio. However, the difference in the playing seemed to exert immense pressure on the dancing crane. As if it had suffered some kind of attack, it shrieked fearfully before abruptly plummeting from the sky and fainting. This. Astonished, Zhong Xian hurried forward to check on the state of the crane. After verifying that the crane had only lost consciousness, he heaved a sigh of relief. Could it be that this music score is unsuited for the 2-star demonic tunist examination? Zhong Xian scratched his head in confusion. No, that shouldn't be it. The core of a demonic tune art lies not in the score but in the intent behind it. Perhaps the rise in my intent doesn't complement the music score. If that's the case, it should work as long as I alter the score correspondingly. Music, just like the dance of a terpsichore, was nothing more than a medium. What stood at the core of demonic tunes was still the intent. Take painting for example, as long as one reached a profound level of proficiency in their painting skills, one would be able to relay one's intent no matter what one drew. The content of the painting itself served as nothing more than a medium. What Zhongxian was currently experiencing was likely to be the disharmony between the richness of the intent he was relaying and the music score he was using. As long as he made adjustments accordingly, there shouldn't be any problem with it. Given his current eye of discernment and understanding of demonic tune arts, altering a music score wasn't too difficult for him. Before long, he had managed to alter the melody to suit his current intent. Thus, his fingers began plucking at the strings of the zither once more. As he had expected, not too long later, another 2 cranes flew into the demonic tunist aula and danced above him. Seeing that it worked, Zhongxian chuckled softly in delight. Having passed the 2-star demonic tunist examination, Zhongxian began adjusting his state of mind once more to evoke the intent of a 3-star demonic tunist when his fingers abruptly moved too forcefully, and a string snapped. As this was the first time he was playing a zither, he failed to keep his strength properly in check, resulting in this unfortunate event. Pada. Yet another 2 cranes fell to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. White foam was spilling from the edges of their mouths, and their eyes were rolled back, revealing only the whites. Somehow, they seemed to exude an aura of indignation, seemingly saying, "We have only come over in appreciation of your music, must you do this to us?" Ugh! The edges of Zhongxian's lips twitched. He was only taking the 2-star demonic tunist examination, but 3 cranes had already fainted. He was probably the first one to do so ever since the establishment of the demonic tunist school. But it honestly wasn't intentional. The quality of this zither was simply too poor. I mustn't allow any problems to occur anymore. Determined to change his image, Zhongxian assessed the score and the zither properly, and only after confirming that there wasn't any problem did he continue to play once more. As the music permeated the room, it didn't take too long for 3 cranes to fly into the demonic tunist aula. This time, Zhongxian had made sure to control his strength properly, so he didn't hurt any of the cranes this time around. It was also the same for the 4-star examination as well. However, just as he was just about to make the transition into the 5-star level of playing, he accidentally exerted too much strength again, and another zither string snapped. The sharp dissonance from the snapping of the cranes left the 4 happily dancing cranes plummeting to the ground. The zither didn't pose much of a problem for the melodies he had played up to 3-star, but it seemed that it was swiftly approaching the limits of its durability at 4-star. Furthermore, Zhongxian's overwhelmingly powerful soul paired with his lack of proficiency in zither playing made it extremely difficult to control his strength perfectly. However, knowing that there was no better zither he could borrow, he could only suppress his frustration and continue with the examination. The most he could do at the moment was just to be more careful than before. Thus, he began making preparations for his 5-star demonic tunist examination. Upon reaching 5-star, one could be already considered an expert of the demonic tunist school. Naturally, the difficulty of the exam was also far harder than those before. Gathering his focus, Zhongxian began plucking at the strings, and a mesmerizing melody resounded throughout the room. The other cranes seemed to be a little apprehensive at approaching the melody this time around, so they didn't rush over immediately like before. Instead, it was 5 minutes into the playing when they finally fly over. Seeing 5 cranes dancing to his melody above, Zhongxian nodded in satisfaction. Heaving a sigh of relief, he was just about to come to the end of the tune when the zither strings snapped once again, 2 this time. Under the abrupt dissonance, the 5 dancing cranes glared at Zhongxian resentfully for an instant and chirped furiously before they followed in the footsteps of the others and plummeted to the ground. Looking at the 12 unconscious divine cranes lying in his surroundings, Zhongxian felt the sight before him turning dark. He really didn't do it intentionally. That darned zither was simply far too lousy to harness the might of his soul. This was just like having an adult draw a child's bow. The slightest lapse in concentration might cause one to lose control of the weapon. It was fortunate that the souls of the cranes were only jolted, resulting in a temporary loss of consciousness. Otherwise, if he were to really cripple 12 of the demonic tunist school's cranes by taking the demonic tunist examination, school head Jiang Qingqin just might skin him alive. Nevertheless, this situation had put him in a dilemma. While Zhongxian could wake them up with his means as a soul oracle, His actions would have likely left a trauma in the crane's mind. Thus, in the short run at the very least, they would be unlikely to be drawn to his music. In other words, these 12 cranes were incapable of judging his level of playing at the moment. But nevertheless, I have successfully cleared the 5-star examination, so I am officially a 5-star demonic tunist now. I think I should just get to 6-star in one go, Zhong Xian thought. It would be too troublesome to return to the demonic tunist school another day, and Zhong Xian also knew that he had the capability to clear the 6-star demonic tunist examination at the moment as well. Even though the conditions might not be ideal, he still wanted to give it a try. Thus, he reconnected the snapped strings and adjusted his state of mind before playing once more. A clear and beautiful melody echoed amid the clouds, and 10 minutes later, 3 divine cranes flew over. Why are there only 3 cranes? Zhong Xian was certain that he had played at the level of a 6-star demonic tunist, but only 3 cranes had arrived. He couldn't help but be perplexed by the bizarre situation before him. He continued playing, hoping that more cranes would arrive soon, but even as he reached the end of his melody, no other cranes arrived around him. Thus, Zhong Xian could only give up and head out. It seemed like due to the limitations resulting from the quality of the zither, 5-star was the current limit of his performance. Most likely, he wouldn't be able to clear the 6-star examination that day. When Zhong Xian walked out, the young man at the entrance took a look at him, and upon seeing his depressed face, he chuckled lightly and said, "The demonic tunist examination wasn't that easy as you expected, was it?" "Indeed." Zhong Xian nodded. He had thought that clearing the 6-star demonic tunist examination would be a piece of cake to him, but the tools he had at hand was simply far too poor. It seemed like he would have to find an opportunity to purchase a zither that was suited for him before attempting the examination once more. "Do you know where I can purchase a better zither here?" Zhong Xian asked the young man. "If you want a truly good zither, you will have to craft it yourself. Only then will you be able to tailor it to your own needs and bring out your full potential," the young man explained. After a moment of contemplation, Zhong Xian nodded and replied, "Got it." Having read countless books, he knew a fair bit about the crafting of zithers as well. However, he didn't have any time to spare for that at the moment, and there wasn't any good material at hand for that either. It seemed like that would have to wait then. "Where do I get the emblem from clearing the examination?" Zhong Xian asked. While it was regretful that he didn't clear the 6-star examination, it would still be good for him to obtain the 5-star emblem first. "Emblem? You cleared the 1-star examination?" The young man was surprised. Nevertheless, he raised his finger and pointed. "You can get your emblem over there. Just place your palm on the wall, and it will give you the corresponding emblem." Zhong Xian walked in the direction where the young man gestured toward, and soon, he found himself standing before a wall. It seemed to be a mechanism similar to the one in the ocean of weapons in the blacksmith school. He placed his palm on the wall. Pada. An emblem with 5 shining stars on it fell out. 5-star. The young man who had followed Zhong Xian, curious to see if he had really cleared the 1-star examination, was shocked to see the 5-star emblem. To clear the 1-star to 5-star examination in a single go, and to use the old zither from the school at that. Just how did he do it? If it was the young man himself, he wouldn't even be able to clear the 3-star examination with a worn zither like that. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the young man said, "You should have told me that you were going to take the 5-star examination. I could have had the cranes prepare themselves for it. Otherwise, even if your zither melody reaches the required level, if the cranes aren't around to hear it, or if there isn't a sufficient number of cranes around, you might have failed the examination." Insufficient number of cranes? Zhong Xian was stunned for an instant before a thought struck him. How many cranes does the demonic tunist school have in total? 15, the young man replied. The school head has reared a couple of them as well, but they are situated a little far from the demonic tunist aula, so they aren't able to hear the zither melody and participate in the evaluation of the examination. 15. Zhong Xian suddenly realized what was going on. The reason there were insufficient cranes in his 6-star examination wasn't due to his lacking capability, but that 12 of them were lying unconscious on the ground, and the remaining 3 were already dancing above him. There were no more cranes left to judge his performance. That explained why the final 3 cranes were staring at him fearfully, seemingly tempted to flee, but mesmerized by the music, they couldn't bring themselves to do so. Can insufficient cranes can lead to a situation where a qualified examinee fails? Zhong Xian asked. Indeed. The demonic tunist aura determines the examinee's capability based on the number of cranes that have gathered in the surroundings. Naturally, if there aren't sufficient cranes in the area, the demonic tunist aura can only deem it a failure. The young man replied. I see. Thank you for your enlightenment. Having understood what was going on, Zhong Xian hurriedly left for school head Jiang's office. Since there weren't sufficient cranes in the area, he would just have to borrow 3 more. But he couldn't help but be a little worried. Would school head Jiang be willing to lend his cranes to him? Chapter 8:27, Zither Dissension of the Cranes. Upon understanding what had happened, Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai's eyelids began twitching uncontrollably. To render 12 cranes unconscious in a demonic tunist examination, you have truly made history today. After confirming that the cranes had only fainted, Jiang Qingqin heaved a sigh of relief before turning to Zhong Xian. The school zithers are made out of ordinary materials, so they are usually only used in 1-star examinations. Beyond that, examinees are expected to bring their own zithers along with them. I understand your situation. Why don't you use my zither to play here? If 6 cranes dance to your melody, I will apply for your 6-star demonic tunist emblem personally. All right. Zhong Xian nodded. Since the other party had volunteered to apply for the 6-star emblem for him, he was spared an additional trip to the demonic tunist aula. Taking the zither from Jiang Qingqin's hands, he gently brushed his fingers past the strings, and a crisp sound reminiscent of top-quality jades clashing with one another sounded. A good zither this is. Zhong Xian commended. Just by listening to the sound produced by school head Jiang's zither, Zhong Xian could tell that it was innumerable times better than the old zither he had used previously. Taking a deep breath, Zhong Xian adjusted his state of mind before beginning to play a light melody. A 1-star music score? Seeing how that fellow was playing a 1-star music score, both Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai shook their heads. However, just as they were about to speak, the cranes in the courtyard abruptly flew over. No more and no less, there were exactly 6 of them. It is actually possible to charm 6 cranes simultaneously with a 1-star music score. Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai nearly fainted from shock upon seeing that sight. A 1-star music score, as the name suggested, was an elementary demonic tune, and it was limited in its prowess. To make an analogy, it was like a mortal battle technique. No matter how exquisitely one executed it, there was a cap on the prowess one could exert through it. Even if they were to play a 1-star music score, it wouldn't be very effective. Yet, the young man before him had actually charmed 6 cranes into dancing to a 1-star music score. Was this still the same fellow who knew nothing about 6 cranes or 7 cranes several hours ago? To become like this after a night of studying? Just what kind of monster are you? It is no wonder you were able to create such a storm in the Master Teacher Academy. Your talent is terrifying. What if he uses a 6-star music score? Vice School Head Ning couldn't help but wonder at the possibility. Since the young man was capable of bringing out the prowess of a 6-star demonic tunist with a 1-star music score, what would happen if he were to use a 6-star music score? Would 7 cranes soar into the sky instantaneously? Would he immediately make the breakthrough to become a 7-star demonic tunist? With such thoughts in mind, the eyes of the duo immediately lit up. Thus, at the end of Zhong Xian's current piece, Jiang Qingqin flicked his wrist and took out a music score. Zhong, this is a 6-star music score, Tides of the Spring Moon. Give it a try. Zhong Xian took the music score and looked through it. As expected of a 6-star music score, it was indeed significantly more complex than the one he had played previously. However, the complexity also made it easier for him to draw out the richness of the intent he harnessed within. If he could only bring out 30% of the intent as a 6-star demonic tunist with the previous tune, he could bring out 100% with the one he was currently looking at, or perhaps, if he were to utilize the music score well, it could even go beyond that. Trying ting tang ting. After contemplating how he would play the tune, Zhong Xian laid his hands on the zither once more, and a melody carrying a faint trace of authority within it burst into the surroundings. As if a rising tide, it filled the entire courtyard. Hearing the zither melody, in a moment of daze, Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai seemed to see a beautiful full moon rising gradually from the water's surface. Amid the spring night, it brought a dim illumination to the world beneath as the darker side to the world sprung to life. The spring river coalesced with the calm sea, a brilliant moon rose amid the tides. Shimmering waves charged along with the tides into the horizon, and nary was there a sight devoid of moonlight. Chio, chio. The melody grew more and more fleeting, and under the influence of the atmosphere, the cranes soared into the sky. 1 crane, 2 cranes, 3 cranes. In the blink of an eye, 6 cranes were already dancing above Zhongxian, seemingly dancing along with the waves, mesmerized by the radiance of the moon. Who? Just as school head Jiang and vice school head Ning were enchanted by the melody as well, the remaining 10 cranes by the side called out simultaneously, and one of them soared up to join the dancing 6. But before that crane could even get close, another one leaped up to bite it and dragged it down to the ground. After which, a second crane spread its wings and prepared to fly up, but before it could lift off the ground, yet another crane rushed forward to stop it. In the blink of an eye, the remaining 10 cranes were tangled in a ferocious fight against one another, unwilling to let each other get ahead of them. In just a short moment, a rain of feathers had already fallen to the ground, and blood dyed the surroundings red. The cranes, which had lived harmoniously with one another for many years, were currently glaring hostilely at one another as if they were archenemies, dying to tear each other apart with their beaks. This. Jiang Qingqin's body couldn't help but shudder at that sight, and he uttered hoarsely, "This is the phenomenon which only one who has achieved an astounding grasp of demonic tunes can produce. Zither dissension of the cranes?" The capability of a demonic tunist was determined by the number of cranes they could charm with the melody they played. However, if all of them were enticed into dancing, a situation might occur where they competed with one another for the slot. The divine crane was an extremely proud beast. If they were to see their companions dancing to a melody, they would be reluctant to make a move themselves, unless the demonic tunist's level of playing had reached an unbelievable level, inducing an uncontrollable urge within the cranes to dance to the zither melody. However, there was a limit to the slots. Thus, they could only tussle with one another to fight over it. Peng, 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 peng. The 10 cranes fought with one another ferociously, determined to become the final one to join the group. After a long and blooded battle, which resulted in a tragic grave of feathers on the ground, the victorious crane finally flapped its wings and joined the group unsteadily. But while it had won, it was a miserable victory. Its feathers had nearly all been torn off by its other companions, revealing the crimson flesh and skin beneath. The dance of a featherless crane, there was not one thing that was divine or graceful about it. At the end of the music piece, Zhongxian finally recovered from the trance he had fallen into in the midst of his playing, and when he saw the blooded mess from the tragic battle of the 10 cranes, he leaped in horror. "What happened while I was playing the zither?" Just as Zhongxian was bewildered by the absurd sight before him, he suddenly saw Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai rushing to him with eyes gleaming in excitement. Does this mean that I have cleared the 6-star demonic tunist examination?" Zhongxian asked. "If this doesn't constitute a pass, nothing will. Don't worry, I will apply for the 7-star demonic tunist emblem for you right now," Jiang Qingqin said. 7-star emblem? Zhongxian was stunned. "Indeed. Your comprehension of demonic tunes has definitely reached 7-star. Jiang Qingqin nodded in awe. To be able to induce the zither dissension of the cranes, his capability was even above that of ordinary 7-star demonic tunist. Upon hearing that the other party would help him apply for the emblem, Zhongxian's eyes lit up. Thank you. With this, he would have 5 supporting occupations cleared. As long as he received another 6-star emblem and his cultivation reached the required level, he would be able to attempt the 6-star master teacher examination. On top of that, with his comprehension of demonic tunes reaching the level of a 7-star demonic tunist, it would be much easier for Zhongxian to help Jiang Qingqin achieve a breakthrough in his level of playing as well. Activating his eye of insight, he began assessing Jiang Qingqin carefully, but a moment later, a peculiar expression surfaced on his face. What's wrong? Is it impossible for me to achieve a breakthrough? Seeing Zhongshen's expression, school head Jiang couldn't help but be worried. He had thought that it would be easy for the other party to offer him pointers for him to achieve a breakthrough given the level of attainment the other party had achieved, but from the looks of it, he was probably being too optimistic. But that was no wonder. If it was that easy to make the breakthrough to a 7-star demonic tunist, he wouldn't have been stuck at a bottleneck for an entire 500 years. Seeing the disappointed look on school head Jiang's face, Zhongshen hurriedly explained the situation. It's not that it's impossible, but you have already made the breakthrough. Your comprehension of demonic tunes has already reached the level of 7-star. I have already made the breakthrough? School head Jiang was stunned. Even vice school head Ning was dumbstruck after hearing Zhongshen's words. Are you for real? It was just yesterday that I was still stuck at the attainment of 6 cranes, and I haven't really done anything since. How and when did I achieve the breakthrough? If I'm not mistaken, school head Jiang must have a transcendent view of worldly affairs. You view all matters with nonchalance, am I right? Zhongshen asked. Vice school head Ning nodded in agreement. School head Jiang is a very composed person. He is able to retain his calm even in the face of a calamity. He had always been in awe of his old friend's ability to allow nothing to get to him. It is not without reason that demonic tunes have such a prefix. In order to truly understand the essence of the word demon, one has to experience the various vicissitudes of life: birth, death, illness, separation, nostalgia, desire, envy. These are the emotions that provoke us to strive for greater heights. Possessing a transcendent view of worldly affairs mean that your mind has stagnated. As such, how can you expect to reach greater heights? Zhongshen asked. This. Jiang Qingqin fell into deep contemplation. 500 years ago, he had undergone a major event which allowed him to view most affairs with nonchalance. He had thought that he had achieved enlightenment, but from the looks of it, that wasn't the case. Living in the mortal world, it is only normal for us to be involved in and affected by worldly affairs. To pay no heed to them and even avoid thinking about them, that isn't transcending beyond mortal affairs but escapism. If you have already chosen to escape from everything you faced, how can you possibly pave your way forward to accomplish a breakthrough? Zhongshen questioned. You're right. Jiang Qingqin's face paled in realization. The other party was right. To pay no heed to worldly affairs was not enlightenment but escapism. There are many experts who would immerse themselves within the vicissitudes of life and experience all kinds of emotions so as to find the impetus to achieve a breakthrough. Yet, you chose to do the opposite. You secluded yourself in your residence, choosing to involve yourself in nothing at all. That is the reason you have been stuck at a bottleneck for the past 500 years. Zhongshen sighed deeply in lamentation. Yesterday, by taming your cranes, I managed to evoke your anger, resulting in a ripple in your stagnated state of mind, which became the impetus for you to overcome your bottleneck. In other words, you achieved a breakthrough yesterday. It was just yesterday that he didn't understand the true difference between 6 cranes and 7 cranes, thinking that it would do as long as he convinced the 7th crane to join in the dance. Who could have known that an unintentional act on his part would actually allow the other party to achieve a breakthrough? It was indeed a blessing in disguise. If he hadn't experienced such a matter personally, it would have been hard for him to believe that there could be such a coincidence in the world. After hearing the lecture, Jiang Qingqin closed his eyes for a brief moment, and the days he had spent over the past 500 years flashed through his mind in an instant. The next moment, he stood up, clasped his fist, and bowed. Determination and gratitude could be seen in his eyes. Zhongshe, thank you for your guidance. From today onward, in the path of a demonic tunist, you shall be my teacher. This. How can I? Not expecting that the esteemed head of the demonic tunist school would suddenly acknowledge him as his teacher, Zhongshen was astonished for an instant before swiftly waving his hands. It is proficiency and not seniority that matters in the path of learning. I might have been studying demonic tunes for a far longer time than you, but my comprehension of it still isn't as deep as yours. Your words today have answered a doubt that I have harbored for more than 500 years. Until you are willing to acknowledge me, I will not rise from my bow, Jiang Qingqin said persistently. This. All right then. Seeing the determination and earnestness in the other party's actions, Zhongxian eventually relented. With his acceptance, the Library of Heaven's path in his mind jolted lightly, and a golden page materialized. However, this wasn't the time to be looking at it. Zhongxian hurried forward to help school head Jiang up. Teacher, I will chop down the phoenix timber tree now and procure its core for you. As for its trunk, I will craft a suitable zither for you, school head Jiang said. I'll be troubling you. Zhongxian nodded. After which, they chatted a while longer, and Zhongxian offered Jiang Qingqin and Ning Hai some pointers regarding demonic tunes which benefited the duo greatly. 2 hours later, with the phoenix timber core which Jiang Qingqin had just had a student procure for him in hand, Zhongxian clasped his fist and bade the duo farewell. However, the moment he stepped out of the demonic tunist school, a thought suddenly struck him, and his face warped in shock. Damn it! I was too concerned with the demonic tunist examination that I forgot about my appointment with her, gathering the books, studying, and taking the demonic tunist examination. By the time he was done with all that, it was already daybreak. Yesterday, Luo Ruoxin had told him that she would look for him later in the night, but it was already way beyond the agreed timing. Thus, Zhongxian hurriedly returned to his manor, and Sun Qiong hurried forward to report to him. Young master, Lady Luo came last night to look for you, but after learning that you weren't around, she left. Did she say anything? Zhongxian asked. Nothing at all. Sun Qiong shook his head. Nothing. Zhongxian scratched his head in bewilderment. Luo Ruoxin had said that she would look for him last night, but she ended up leaving without saying anything. What was she up to? I will head over to her residence to take a look, Zhongxian said. Returning to the Master Teacher Academy, he found Luo Ruoxin's residence, and after asking around, he learned that the other party wasn't in, so he could only return to his manor helplessly. Even though he did feel a little stifled within due to missing Luo Ruoxin's appointment, considering that the latter seemed to have some important matter for him, it was likely that she would return another day. Thus, there no need for him to feel so conflicted over this issue. In any case, his efforts the previous night had brought him the phoenix timber core, so it wasn't really a wasted trip anyway. As soon as he obtained the grand intermittence grass and the other medicinal herbs from the old elders, he would be ready to forge the grand intermittence pill. Under the nourishment of the earth vein spirit essence, even though it wasn't sufficiently potent to heal Wei Ruyan's body, it was still able to prevent the state of her physical body from declining any further at the very least. Besides, it would take some more time before the 10-leafed flower nurtured her soul to a satisfactory level, so there was no rush at all. When Zhongxian returned to his manor once more, he heaved a sigh of relief. Now that he finally had some time to himself, he suddenly recalled a fellow who he had been neglecting over the past few days, Byzantium Alios Beast. It had been around 8 days since he had captured that fellow on Leiyuan Peak, but he hadn't had any time to interrogate it properly yet. Since he finally had some time at hand, it would be good to coax some news on the otherworldly demons from it. Considering that we are in the center of the city, in the vicinity of the Master Teacher Academy, I should set up a formation to conceal that fellow's aura. Otherwise, I might be noticed by others when I release the otherworldly demon puppets on it. The manor Zhongxian was currently residing in was enormous, so there was more than sufficient space to deal with the Byzantium Alios Beast here. However, considering that they were in the middle of a bustling city instead of some remote mountain, it was still imperative to take some precautions so as to ensure that no one would learn of the otherworldly demon puppets. Not to mention, they were extremely close to the Master Teacher Academy as well. Considering the sharp senses that Saint Realm experts possessed, it was best not to take his chances. He was currently a 4-star formation master, so he was familiar with quite a few grade 4 formations. After some searching about, he finally found a suitable one. This aura sealing formation should do. The aura sealing formation served to isolate all auras within a set area from the rest of the world. As long as a Saint Realm expert didn't consciously attempt to peek in the area, it would be hard for them to notice what was within the aura sealing formation. While it was only a grade 4 pinnacle formation, It was currently the best formation capable of concealing auras that he could come up with. Even though he had experience setting up grade 6 hidden formation in the underground chamber, the formation was incapable of concealing auras or even sound. Given the current circumstances, the aura-sealing formation was much more useful. I should begin. Taking a swift look at the courtyard, Zhongxian swiftly deduced the ideal manner in which he should set up his formation before abruptly throwing several hundred formation flags out at once. Hoo hoo hoo. The flags soared through the air and landed in their corresponding locations simultaneously. Wang. The formation came to life. 100 flags of void sealing. All right. Seeing that the formation had been set up, Zhongxian flicked his wrist and took out the myriad ant-hive nest, and the next moment, a massive ape-saint beast appeared on the ground. After being trapped for over a week, the Byzantium Alios beast was finally released from its confines. Chapter 828, Byzantium Alios beast, found faction leader. After Zhongshe left school head Jiang's residence, he returned straight to the manor which King Huai gave him. After which, he headed to Luosha's residence but left shortly after. Since then, he hasn't left his manor. In the courtyard of a vast residence sitting at the very center of the Formation Master School, a young lady reported to a beautiful silhouette before her. Dongxin turned around and asked, "He hasn't left his manor?" Ever since the affairs at the physician school, she had been sending her men to trail Zhongxian so as to uncover his weaknesses, but the latter had been so busy that it was hard to even catch a glimpse of him. So far, she still hadn't received anything that she could use against him. Yes. The other lady nodded in response. All right, you may leave now. Dongxin waved her hands casually before placing them behind her back. A slight spring breeze tugged at her robe, highlighting her mesmerizing figure. She lived up to her name as one of the top beauties of the academy. Her posture and gestures carried a unique charm to them. If Hu Yarrow was a thorny rose, she would be an elegant lily, cold but alluring. One has to enter the tiger's den to find a cub. If I wish to uncover that fellow's weakness, I will probably have to make a move myself. Dongxin's eyebrows shot up. She was an extremely careful and meticulous person, and she didn't like to depend on second-hand news. Even though she had heard many things about Zhongxian from Hu Yarrow and the others, she still held her reservations toward the authenticity of their words, choosing to devote significant resources to investigating him herself. However, perhaps it might be due to Zhongxian being far too careful, her subordinates had been unable to obtain any useful intelligence on him yet. It seemed like she would have to make a move herself if she wished to find anything useful. All right, I should head over to take a look. Switching to an ordinary robe, Dongxin flitted out of her residence. She had already tasked someone with uncovering the location of the manor which King Huai had given Zhongxian, so she knew its exact location. It wasn't located too far from the Master Teacher Academy, so she arrived at her destination within a few minutes. It seems like there are quite a few formations set up here. However, you are being too naive if you think that this can stop me. Chuckling lightly, Dongxin infiltrated the manor. She was one of the top grade 5 students in the Master Teacher Academy, a transcendent mortal 9-dan chrysalis realm expert. On top of that, she was the direct disciple of Chen Chengxuan, the head of the Formation Master School. The formations in the manor might have been able to stop 4-star and 5-star formation masters in their tracks, but to hinder her passage? Dream on. Slowly advancing carefully in the manor, Dongxin soon found herself standing before a vast courtyard. A formation was currently active in the courtyard. It created a thick layer of mist around the courtyard, preventing one from seeing what was within. Dongxin recognized it with a single glance. This is a 4-star pinnacle aura sealing formation. The purpose of the formation is to conceal one's aura. Could it be that his weakness is hidden within here? Dongxin's eyes lit up in excitement. The aura sealing formation didn't have much practical use other than concealing one's aura. For the other party to set up such a formation within his manor, there was no doubt that he was trying to hide something. I must find a way to get through the aura sealing formation to take a look. Dongxin clenched her fists tightly in agitation. Her enemy's secret, and possibly his greatest weakness as well, was standing right before her. She couldn't let this opportunity slip through her fingers. Gritting her teeth ferociously, she began analyzing the formation carefully with her beady eyes. It isn't too difficult to decipher a grade 4 aura sealing formation, but if I make a wrong move, I might end up shifting the formation flags and cause some unexpected changes in the formation. As a 6-star formation master, Dongxin was more than able to overcome an aura sealing formation. However, the tricky part was to sneak in without the other party noticing. To do so, she would have to study the formation thoroughly and plan out her moves carefully. With a swift movement, she leaped onto a lush tree in the corner of the courtyard to conceal herself. After which, she took out a geomantic compass and began making her calculations based on the spiritual energy flow in the surroundings. Li San, Zun Wu. Dongxin swiftly performed her calculations, and the more calculations she made, the more awed she became. The person who set up this aura sealing formation is a person of great capability. He managed to align the formation perfectly with the entire mana, turning the two into one entity. Even I am unable to achieve such a feat. Even though the formation before her was only at grade 4 pinnacle, it was perfectly aligned with the surroundings, drawing out prowess that only grade 5 formations could possess. To be able to bring out such prowess in a grade 4 formation, the other party's capability as a formation master could only be above hers. But ultimately, there's still a limit to how powerful a grade 4 formation can be. No matter how well he might have set it up, as long as I find the life gate, I will still be able to get in easily. Dongxin chuckled softly in confidence. Her talent in formations were extraordinary, and this was also the reason the head of the Formation Master School had taken her in as his disciple. The formation might be far beyond the normal scope of an ordinary grade 4 formation, but due to its fundamental limits, she was still able to decipher it easily. Taking a deep breath, she was just about to confirm the location of the life gate and sneak in when the ground suddenly shook intensely. A violent energy burst out from the formation. It felt as if a powerful expert was trying to break the formation from within to escape. Boom! 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 Dongxin swiftly hid herself before she heard yet another powerful shockwave striking the aura sealing formation. Under the immense force, Pili Pala, the formation began to crumble. To be able to destroy a grade 5 formation with brute force, the person trapped inside the formation must be at least a Saint Realm expert. Dongxin narrowed her eyes in astonishment. While the aura sealing formation was meant to be a grade 4 pinnacle formation, the person who had set it up had done it so impeccably, complementing it perfectly with the surroundings, that it harnessed the prowess only grade 5 formations should possess. For a grade 5 formation to crumble under brute force, it could only mean that the person trapped within was an unbelievably powerful expert. Boom! Amidst her shock, Dongxin saw an enormous figure emerging from the crumbling formation. This is Senior Byzantium Alios. Her body immediately stiffened from sheer astonishment. As a grade 5 student, she had been fortunate enough to meet the tamed beast of the old principal several times. But wasn't he kidnapped by the otherworldly demons? How can he be here? Or could it be? The thought that just flashed through Dongxin's mind filled her with unprecedented horror. You intend to escape? Vicious, take it down. In the next instant, a nonchalant voice suddenly sounded in the courtyard, and an overwhelming killing intent permeated the area. Pada. Before Senior Byzantium Alios could even react, he had already fallen back to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. It's the otherworldly demonic tribe. Dongxin was so frightened that she didn't even dare to move in the slightest. The rest of you, get him. Pummel him to death. Following which, the nonchalant voice sounded once more, and 20 Saint Realm otherworldly demons abruptly appeared and charged furiously towards Senior Byzantium Alios. Pili Pala. Fists and kicks sunk into the flesh of the helpless Senior Byzantium Alios, and in the blink of an eye, he was already bruised all over. He lay on the floor twitching uncontrollably, and it felt like he could breathe his last at any moment. Covering her mouth firmly to stifle her gasp, Dongxin felt her blood run cold. In that instant, she dared not to make the slightest movement or noise for fear of being noticed. The enemy side had 20 Saint Realm otherworldly demons, and even Senior Byzantium Alios wasn't a match for them. If she were to be noticed, there was no doubt that she would be slaughtered in an instant. It fainted again. Through the gaps of the leaves, she saw Zhongxian walking leisurely toward Senior Byzantium Alios and harumphing coldly. He flicked his wrist, and the massive Senior Byzantium Alios abruptly disappeared from sight. After which, he looked at the broken formation and fell into deep thought. This formation is too weak. It seems like I should head to the Formation Master School to learn a more formidable formation. Zhongxian muttered under his breath before walking back to his room. Even after Zhongxian had disappeared from sight, Dongxin didn't dare to move, fearing that the other party might return abruptly. It was only 6 hours later, when dusk had finally set in, that she dared to move her stiffened body and swiftly flee from the manor. The matter she had seen that day was truly huge. It was so huge that it terrified her to her very core. It was no wonder Zhongxian was so talented, skilled in every aspect. It turned out that he was really not a human. It was said that the royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe possessed the capability to disguise themselves as humans, and not even Saint Realm master teachers would be able to tell the difference. When she'd first heard of it, she had thought of it as utter nonsense. How could such a convenient ability exist in the world? But to think that it would actually be true. For an otherworldly demon to disguise itself as a master teacher and even successfully infiltrate the Master Teacher Academy. This news would cause not only a huge uproar in the Master Teacher Academy but the Master Teacher Pavilion as well. Realizing the implications behind this issue, Dongxin rushed straight to the Master Teacher Academy as fast as she could. This won't do. I can't let his schemes succeed. I have to report this matter to the Academy this instant. This was no longer something that she, as a student, had the power to deal with. She had to inform the top echelons of the Master Teacher Academy as soon as possible. But, given how astounding this matter was, would anyone believe her? After all, that Zhongxian had earned the deep trust of School Head Mo, School Head Zhao, School Head Wei, and just a few hours ago, even that of School Head Wei. On top of that, he was also a close friend of Pavilion Master Mo, and he seemed to have an amicable relationship with Luoxue from the headquarters too. If she were to accuse him of being an otherworldly demon without concrete evidence, not only would others not believe her, she might even be stripped of her master teacher license on the grounds of slandering her own peers. I should first discuss this matter with teacher. Dongxin thought. As the person who had founded the Dongxin faction and led it to become one of the strongest student factions in the academy, she was by no means a reckless or foolish person. Even though it had only been days since Zhongxian had enrolled at the academy, he had already won the trust of several dozen thousand students along with 4 school heads and Pavilion Master Mo. Her current standing was in no way on par with his. Under the circumstances, since there was no concrete evidence to back her words, she was in a definite disadvantage on this matter. It was highly likely that the tables would turn on her, and perhaps, her life might even be threatened. Thus, it was imperative for her to act cautiously and even more carefully for this matter. But even if teacher were to trust me, his standing is still beneath that of School Head Zhao. That won't be sufficient to overthrow Zhongxian. A figure suddenly surfaced in Dongxin's mind. Wait, I can look for School Head Lu Feng. While it was true that her teacher Chen Chengxuan, the head of the Formation Master School, did possess immense prestige in the Master Teacher Academy, his standing was still beneath that of Zhao Bingshu. If Zhao Bingshu were to oppose to the motion that her teacher raised, it was highly likely that the entire matter might fall through. However, things would be different if she could rally the stand-in principal, Lu Feng, to her side. Lu Feng and Zhongxian had a hostile relationship, so Lu Feng might be inclined to listen to her words. I should first find teacher and have him take me to School Head Lu Feng. Dongxin gritted her teeth in determination. The implications behind this matter were simply too huge. The matter wouldn't just resolve itself if she only revealed what she had seen. She had to gather sufficient power on her side first. And at this very moment, the person who wielded the greatest say in the academy was indubitably School Head Lu Feng. On top of that, the other party had a grudge against Zhongxian, so if she were to reveal this news to him, it was likely that the other party would side with her. Having made up her mind, she headed toward the school head office of the Formation Master School without any hesitation. Chapter 829. I am the old principal's tamed beast. Not knowing that Dongxin had already discovered the secret regarding the Byzantium Alio's beast, Zhongxian was currently making his way over to the Formation Master School. Even though he had set up his aura sealing formation impeccably, the formation's grade was ultimately still too low. While the Byzantium Alio's beast was tightly squeezed inside the myriad ant hive nest, it was still a saint beast with incredible regenerative capability. In just a few days, it had mostly recovered from the wounds it had sustained previously. Thus, as soon as it was released in the courtyard, it exerted its full might to break the formation so as to escape. It was fortunate that Zhongxian had expected such a situation and had prepared in advance for it. Through utilizing the strength of Vicious and the otherworldly demon puppets, he had managed to subdue it eventually. However, that wasn't a feasible solution in the long run. Zhongxian had no choice but to take the Byzantium Alio's beast out in order to interrogate it on the affairs of the otherworldly demons, but if he couldn't trap it properly with his formation, it might just end up escaping while his guard was down one day. Furthermore, the shattering of the aura sealing formation meant that it was possible for the aura of the otherworldly demon puppets to escape, and he might potentially draw in the Saint Realm experts of the Academy as a result of it. If that were to happen, it would be difficult for him to explain himself. After much contemplation, Zhongxian decided that he should first study a higher grade formation just to be safe. Thus, he left his manor, and before long, he was already in the Formation Master School. I should start with the library first. After confirming the location of the library from the passers-by, he found a small gazebo in its vicinity, sat down in there, and drew his soul out. The Formation Master School was ranked third in the entire Master Teacher Academy. There was a constant flow of people going in and out of its library, a sight that one would never see in the Terpsichore School or the Demonic Tunist School. It didn't take too long for Zhongxian to get into the library. As he was currently a 4-star Formation Master, he decided to skip the books in the lower levels and head right up to the 5th floor. Hualala. As his gaze swept over the shelves, book after book swiftly appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. In 4 hours, he had already finished taking in all of the books on the 5th and 6th floors, and he compiled them to form the 5-star and 6-star Heaven's Path formation art. After he was done, he quickly returned his soul to his body and began studying. When Zhongxian finally opened his eyes once again 2 hours later, there was a bright gleam in them. At that very moment, his comprehension of formations had reached the equivalent of a 6-star pinnacle formation master. Even against the head of the Formation Master School, he was confident that he would be able to stand his ground. Should I take the 6-star Formation Master examination while I am here? Standing up, Zhongxian contemplated with his right hand stroking his lower jaw. If he could receive a 6-star Formation Master emblem as well, he would have cleared one of the main prerequisites to the 6-star Master Teacher examination. After a moment of hesitation, Zhongxian decided against it. Forget it, I have been taking too many examinations recently. If I continue at this pace, I might just end up drawing doubts upon myself, and that would be troublesome. For the time being, I should focus my effort on interrogating the Byzantium Alio's beast. He had taken quite a lot of examinations in recent days: blacksmith, terpsichore, physician, apothecary, demonic tunist. The matter had caused a huge uproar in the Master Teacher Academy. Since his cultivation was still too low to take the 6-star Master Teacher examination, it might be good for him to slow down for the time being. Once the current heat had dissipated, he could continue as he pleased. In any case, his knowledge couldn't possibly escape from him. It would make no difference whether he took the examination now or later. Having made up his mind, Zhongxian returned straight to his manor. He walked directly to his courtyard and took out a couple of formation flags to set up a grade 6 breath isolation formation. When he was finally done, he took a look at the work he had just achieved and nodded in satisfaction. Unlike other grade 6 formations, which were impossible to successfully set up without reaching Chrysalis Realm or even Half-Saint, the breath isolation formation could be set up even by those whose cultivation wasn't up to par. Zhongxian had done some calculations, and he had realized that even if the Byzantium Alio's beast was in its peak state, it would still be unable to break the formation. With this, Zhongxian would no longer have to worry about anything escaping from it. Zhongxian stepped into the formation and deployed the otherworldly demon puppets in the surroundings. After this was done, he released the Byzantium Alios beast. If you want to kill me, just do it. By this point, the Byzantium Alios beast had already awoken from its previous unconsciousness. It lay motionless on the ground as it glared at the young man before it with deep resentment. As the tamed beast of the old principle, when had it ever suffered like that before? If only it wielded sufficient power in its hands, it would have surely ripped the fellow before it into shred. If it was my intention to kill you, I would have already done so on Leyuan Peak. There would have been no need for me to keep you alive until now. Zhongxian waved his hands coldly. If you don't want to suffer, you'd better reveal your motive for harming the 30,000 examinees and the mastermind behind you. If you do so, I can consider sparing your life. Otherwise, believe me, I will make every single day of yours a living hell. This fellow was unlike the ancient ape on the cloud mist ridge. Soul search was not an infallible technique. The main reason Zhongxian had been able to successfully use it on the ancient ape was due to the latter's fear of him, and the unstable state of mind made it easier to peer into his memories. On the other hand, the Byzantium Alios beast had a headstrong and loyal personality. Considering how it hadn't spoken a word despite being pummeled again and again, there was a good chance that soul search may fail on it. If that was the case, Zhongxian would lose the only lead he had on the otherworldly demons. Honestly speaking, he also couldn't help but feel deeply helpless against this fellow. Make my life a living hell? Do you think that I'm afraid of that? The Byzantium Alios beast roared furiously. My master was killed by otherworldly demons like you. You want me to submit to the likes of you? Not in a million years. His master had devoted his life to fighting against the otherworldly demons, and having accompanied by his master's side for many years, the Byzantium Alios beast had inherited his moral compass. It had a clear notion of what it should do and what it shouldn't do. If it were to side with the otherworldly demons, it would be too ashamed to continue living in this world. Rather than live without honor and dignity, it would rather die. Your master was killed by otherworldly demons. Zhongxian frowned. What do you mean by that? The Byzantium Alios beast harumphed. Your deception is meaningless. You are royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe, right? Only the royalty can conceal their aura perfectly and disguise themselves as master teachers without catching the notice of others. Disguise as master teachers? Zhongxian burst into laughter. He was intending to interrogate the other party on the whereabouts of the otherworldly demons, but to think that he would end up being framed by the other party instead. Do you think that you can prove your innocence by fabricating such lies? To control so many spirit beasts to attack the examinees of the Master Teacher Academy, even a fool can tell that you have malicious intentions in mind. Who else can you possibly be working for if not the otherworldly demons? Zhongxian sneered coldly. Attack the examinees. Malicious intentions. The short-tempered Byzantium Alios beast's face turned scarlet upon hearing the accusation. I was invited by school head Mo to facilitate an examination for the examinees. How is that a malicious intention? Facilitate an examination? You had the myriad ant-hive queen to track down the whereabouts of the students so that the spirit beasts could lay a trap for them to step into. Can that even be called an examination? If I hadn't discovered it in time, who knows how many students would have lost their lives? Zhongxian sneered disdainfully. Seeing that the other party was trying to soil its honor, the Byzantium Alios beast explained indignantly. Those spirit beasts were captured by school head Mo, and I had already warned them against killing any of the examinees. The purpose of the examination was to dampen their arrogance and have them understand that the strength of master teachers lies in their collectivity, not the individual. Even at death, it would die an honorable beast. It wouldn't allow anyone to frame it of anything. There's such a way of going about it too. Zhongxian was stunned. At this point, he suddenly couldn't help but recall the situation back when he was still on the Leyuan Peak, when he encountered 200 master teachers surrounded by 400 spirit beasts. While the situation seemed perilous then, thinking back, it was indeed bizarre how there were no casualties. Could it really have been part of the examination? If that was the case, Could it be that he had misunderstood the Byzantium Alios beast? You are acquainted with school head Mo? Zhong Xian asked. Of course. I am the tamed beast of the Master Teacher Academy's old principal. How could I possibly not know who school head Mo Zhu is? The Byzantium Alios beast said with clenched jaws. You can kill me, but don't even dream of prying my mouth open. The tamed beast of the old principal. Zhong Xian's mouth twitched upon hearing those words. During his time in the Master Teacher Academy, he had that the old principal's tamed beast had disappeared, and back then, he had thought that it was the doing of otherworldly demons. To think that the culprit would be him instead. Oblivious to Zhong Xian's shock, the Byzantium Alios beast roared resolutely, Indeed, my master might have already left me, but there is no way that I will side with otherworldly demons. Impossible. Side with otherworldly demons? Are you saying that I am an otherworldly demon? Zhong Xian asked with a bizarre look on his face. Is that not it? To be protected by the will of an otherworldly demon expert and so many otherworldly demon puppets. Who else can you be if not an otherworldly demon? The Byzantium Alios beast spat. This. Glancing at the otherworldly demon puppets in the surroundings, Zhong Xian blinked his eyes in a daze. If one were to see so many otherworldly demon puppets all of the sudden without knowing of the inside story, they would indeed assume that to be the case. It seemed like the entire matter was just a huge misunderstanding. He had thought that the Byzantium Alios beast was a subordinate dispatched by the otherworldly demons to harm the Master Teacher Academy's examinees, and the other party thought that he was royalty of the otherworldly demonic tribe. What the heck? If he'd known this was a misunderstanding, he would never have been so harsh on the Byzantium Alios beast. Taking a look at the other party's state, he didn't even look like a beast anymore. Recalling the sight of how his puppets had pummeled the other party viciously just earlier that afternoon, Zhong Xian's lips twitched uncontrollably. It seemed like, somehow, things had gotten out of hand. In terms of standing, the tamed beast of the old principal was comparable to a school head. To pummel the other party viciously, leaving it on the verge of death multiple times. If others were to learn of it, he would be a goner. The entire academy would be raising their pitchforks toward him, hunting him down to the ends of the world. Currently, there are only two solutions before me. One is to kill the other party and ensure that no one learns that I am the culprit. The other is to tame it and make it my tamed beast. Otherwise, it will surely rally others against me as soon as I set it free. Zhong Xian's mind swiftly whirred into action upon realizing that this was a huge misunderstanding. Given the other party's standing, even if Zhong Xian were to prove that he wasn't an otherworldly demon, there was no way it would be willing to let Zhong Xian off the hook just because he had left it on the brink of death multiple times. If he were to release it, there was no doubt that he would be in for a round of misfortune. The easiest and safest way out of this was to just kill the other party. I can't. I should try the second solution instead. It was admirable and touching how the Byzantium Alios beast refused to budge even in the face of death, choosing to take the secrets of humanity with it to its grave instead. It was one thing if Zhong Xian was unaware of it, but now that he had learned of it, he would surely regret it for life if he were to kill the other party. Taming might be difficult, but Zhong Xian felt that it was the only acceptable solution out of this mess. Having made up his mind, Zhong Xian exhaled deeply before turning to the Byzantium Alios beast and said, I am not from the otherworldly demonic tribe. I am a real master teacher. Stop putting on an act here. Do you think that I'll believe you? The Byzantium Alios beast didn't believe Zhong Xian at all. If the other party wasn't an otherworldly demon, how could he have so many otherworldly demon puppets protecting him? On top of that, the will of an otherworldly demon expert had even pledged loyalty to him. Don't even think that you can fool me that easily just because I am a beast. Zhong Xian shook his head and sighed. Consider our plight. Is there really a need for me to lie to you? I really am not an otherworldly demon. There is a huge misunderstanding between us. The next moment, the aura that Zhong Xian exuded abruptly changed. In that very instant, his presence felt like an inviolable deity from the heavens, a figure whose authority one could never challenge. This is. Sensing the aura, the Byzantium Alios beast was bewildered briefly. Then, a thought struck it, and its eyes immediately widened in astonishment. "You are a Celestial Master Teacher?" You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,